money available to them on demand. So thoughtful leadership is not only about, as I said, position, is not about power, it's about being with people, relating to people, looking at the core or looking at people as a complete being, a total being, and then applying your leadership in ensuring that the people perspectives and the organization perspectives mesh with each other in terms of driving performance in the organization. And believe you me, organizations or leaders who dealt with people through this spectrum have excelled on their budgets, have excelled on their performances, even during pandemic. Some of these companies whose scripts one saw shooting northwards were these organizations where the leadership executed their thought leadership through compassion, through trust, through financial wellness of their employees. So I think the paradigm of leadership now is exactly what years ago Gandhi, Mandela propounded, which is the servant leadership. A thought leader is the one who has service orientation at the core of his heart in everything that he does, whether it is employees' financial well-being, whether it is employees' emotional well-being, whether it is employees' family wellness. If service orientation is the only differentiator for every successful leader in today's context. And I think pandemic just reinforced this. If we bring this pure service orientation of Satya Seva Prem, truth, love, integrity in our leadership DNA, in our leadership value system, I think organizations and together in tandem people will excel at our workplace. Thank you very much. I enjoyed talking to you this morning. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Muttal, for giving a lovely insight on thoughtful leadership. Now may I have the pleasure to invite our next session chairman for this morning. He's a global talented leader from a STEAM organization. Let me invite and put your hands together for Aditya Sareen, Head of Capability, Leadership Development and Cadre Management from Tata Power. Please, sir.
Good morning, everybody. It's a delight to be here. And first of all, my best wishes to Dr. Bhatia and the World HRD Congress for completing 30 years. I think it's a glorious moment. Let's give them a round of applause. This has to be louder. It's 30 years. It's 3 decades. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor for me to be here at this time and be part of the session that's unfolding during the day. It's difficult when you have stalwarts like Dr. Muttal who leave the stage for you and you have to fall into their shoes. I think learning from you, sir, every day trying to emulate and get closer to what you've done. I have immense pleasure in introducing to all of you Faridun Dotiwala, who's the partner at Mumbai McKinsey & Company for the next session. Faridun leads the talent management work of McKinsey in Asia. Since joining McKinsey, he has helped executives pursue operational and performance transactions. This work typically involves deep engagement with the organization, including fostering mindset and behavior change, supporting leadership development, and helping top teams achieve greater alignment. While directing performance transformation initiatives, Faridun seeks to shape the organization culture by changing how people work together and what performance targets they set. The goal is to help organizations be more agile, and that's the word that there is today, able to move quickly to seize opportunities. And by improving the performance and health of leading companies, he aspires to improve the lives of all employees. It's a long introduction because he has done some very phenomenal work, so please bear with me. I will take a minute more to introduce Faridun. Faridun also helps drive leadership at scale. When organizations pursue stronger performance, they often have the simultaneous opportunity to hone their executive development approaches and build leadership bench strength. He has served as a formal coach and counselor to many senior executives, focusing on supporting them through challenges and role transitions. Examples of his recent work include advising on leadership development for the top 60 executives at one of India's fastest growing companies, including defining and embedding a new organizational culture, architecting a large-scale transformation platform across functions for a chemical company, including training change agents and creating a new culture focused on meeting stretch improvement targets, establishing a leadership development approach for top leaders at a steel company focused on real business projects, resulting in significant financial impact, and a new development approach taking root cause of the organization. And most importantly, boosting the organizational health of a large conglomerate across more than 8 companies, including diagnostics, top team alignment, leadership development, and on-ground performance improvements. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Faridun Dotiwala for the session on mindset change through storytelling. Faridun, welcome.
So good morning. While we just set this up, good morning. Can you all hear me? Great. So I'm going to use the hand mic because I want to make this a little more interactive. And I've got a few slides to share, which they're just kind of putting up. So just give us a minute. What I'm going to talk about while they put this up is the power of story. So all of you have heard of stories, but how many of you have children? Just raise your hands. So you all are actually already natural storytellers, right? And what I'm going to talk about is how this art of actually telling stories, which we used to do as children or we do with children, is one of the most important arts that we can use in business. And I'll talk a little bit about how that actually happens. So let's hope that we can now get started. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thanks. If you can just put it up, perfect. Okay. So I think we already spoke in the morning of the Black Swan event, the change that's going on. And I think nothing captures it for me better than this quote, right? Which is, things are getting better and better and worse, faster and faster. So we're living in a time of great change. And obviously in a time of great change, all organizations are struggling to keep up. They're trying to change as fast. But let's look at how easy or hard it is for organizations to actually change. So the first real study of change in organizations was done in 1995 by a person called Cotter. And what he studied organizations across industries, across countries, to try and see what percentage of organizations who attempt change actually succeed. So anyone can guess what that percentage is? Just shout out a number. What percentage of organizations who attempt to change actually succeed? 10%? Anyone else? 15? Okay. 25? Okay. Anyone else? It doesn't have to be in ascending order. You can say anything. 5%? Okay. So what he found was that that number was actually 30%. So 30% of organizations succeed. Now, it's not that the rest don't achieve anything, but they don't really achieve what they set out to do. In the year 2000, another study was done. And there, what they found was that the success rate of organizations going through change is around 30%. In 2005, the Gartner Group did a study, And they found that the success rate of organizations going through change was, anyone can guess? So much? 30%. In 2010, McKinsey did a very large study to try and understand the success rate of organizations going through change and found that the answer was 30%. In 2015, just to make sure nothing has changed, we repeated the study and found that the number was still 30%. In 2020, of course, COVID hit, but if you had done the same study again, you would have found the same answer. Now, the question to you is, if all these companies, great companies around the world, across sectors, countries, industries, with all the resources they put into trying to make change happen, and the answer is only 30%, what is it that comes in the way? Any guesses? What stops? What prevents the success rate from being harder? Resistance to change? Anything else? Mindsets? Sorry? Adaptability? Abstract ideas? Fear? So all of you are actually right in a different way. So when you actually look at what actually comes in the way, about 10% of it is because of inadequate resources. About 15% is because of all sorts of other reasons. But a full 40% is employees' resistance to change, which is fear, resistance to change, and management behavior not supportive of change, which is really quite surprising, which is because what that means is that despite all of what management says, they themselves are actually not supportive of change. And what you find is, therefore, you can say that organizations don't really change. Is that fair to say? It's people that change, right? So the chairs, tables, books, computers don't change. So whenever people talk about organizational change, it's actually people who change. Now, where there's a problem with that, the problem is the following, which is that, you know, there was a physicist called Niels Bohr. Do you remember Niels Bohr? We must have learned about him in school. Yeah, anyone remember Niels Bohr? Just wave your hand. Yeah, someone at the back is a fan of Niels Bohr. But no. So Niels Bohr had a quote, imagine how hard physics would be. Imagine how hard physics would be if particles could think. So the problem with organizational change is that the thousands of employees and each of them will think through and go through their own process of making change happen. Which is why we have something above the surface, which are the behaviors in an organization, but below are the real mindsets that have to be changed. Now, there are many things that have to happen in order to change mindsets. One of the most important is what we call story, right? And, you know, this quote captures it well. Tell me the facts and I'll learn. Tell me the truth and I'll believe. But tell me a story and it will be in my heart forever. So I'm going to spend some time talking about what is story and how do you create a good story for the organization. So the purpose of a good story, and I'll talk about why a story is very different from a plan, is to engage the organization. And there must be 3 or 4 elements that are important. People must know why we are doing this. People must know what exactly they have to do, what they'll get in return. And that is what actually engages people. Why do stories actually work? There's a neuroscience and a science behind it. The reason why stories work is, so first of all, why are stories important? There is something called false consensus, right? Which is a false consensus effect is essentially where if I believe something, I believe that everybody else believes the same. So there was this very interesting experiment done many years ago I think it was at Stanford, where they asked people or asked students to wear a sign around on their neck, big sign, saying "Eat at Joe's," and to walk around the campus. Now there was no restaurant called Joe's, so there was no such thing. So it was just a foolish thing. Just if someone comes up to you and says, "Can you wear this sign and walk across?" And they were told, if you don't wear it, nothing will happen. If you wear it, we'll teach you something. So there was no big reward. So some people wore it, some people didn't, as expected. Then they asked the people who wore the sign, what percentage of people do you think would agree to wear the sign? And they said about 65%. Then they asked the people who didn't wear the sign, what percentage of people do you think would wear the sign? And they said about 30%. Which means everyone believes that what they believe is what everyone else believes. And that's a big mistake in trying to make change happen. By the way, did you know that research shows that 65 to 70% of everything we speak, all of us in this room, is either gossip or stories? Do you know that? And you think about it, it's true, right? I know you're laughing, but it's gossip or stories. So we actually live in stories, and therefore story becomes so important. And there's a neuroscience of story. When people hear a story, they actually get attracted to it. They actually kind of want to kind of follow it. Now imagine if Martin Luther King had said, instead of saying, I have a dream, he had said, look, I have a plan with 10 initiatives. Do you think people would have been motivated by that? Of course not. So what's the real difference between a plan and a story is a plan, which is also very important, is the most direct way to go from A to B. So all of you organizations will have a plan. You'll have a business plan. Yes, I'm sure you do, right? So that's the most direct way. I need to achieve 7,000 crores revenues. This is the way I'm going to do it. The story is not the plan made in a bigger font, in a nice PowerPoint, presented in a different way. The story is the most interesting way to go from A to B. And that's actually what captures people. And this is a really important point to keep in mind. A plan is the most direct way to go from A to B, but a story is the most interesting way to go from A to B. To explain to people where you are going, you tell them your plan, but to inspire them to come along, you have to create a story. Is that clear? You have to create a story. So, okay, so give you an example. Here's an example. The cat sat on the mat. Is that an interesting story? Yes or no? Are you intrigued by that story? Not really. But if I change it to the cat sat on the dog's mat, so something has to happen. The story has to be interesting. It has to excite you. It has to kind of engage. It has to kind of engage you. That's what makes the story really, really powerful. And so therefore you can say, why is story important? Because it keeps you sharp. It inspires people. It makes it easier to change things. It touches people's hearts. That's all the reasons why stories are important. Now, there is one problem. In all your organizations, if I was to ask you, are there existing stories in the organization, what would you say? Yes? So there'll be stories about how bad the management is. You agree? Yes, there'll be stories about, how the industry is changing. So there'll always be existing stories. The problem is most of these stories are not very helpful. So the question is, your story has to actually replace some of the stories that are kind of in the organization. Because you're not telling stories into a vacuum. And in fact, what you find is that there are 3 types of stories in organizations that are unhelpful. And we call them the 3 Fs. The first are stories of fear. Jobs will be lost. I will get blamed. This won't work. My role will become less important. The other are stories of what we call fantasy, which is we'll achieve this even if we don't do anything different. Somehow or the other it will happen. I can do this on my own. We don't need a different plan. And then there's, of course, formula, which is this is the way it always works. You will recognize these patterns. So maybe I'll ask you to do a little exercise, which is just with the person sitting next to you, spend just 2 minutes and just articulate what are 1 or 2 stories like this that are there in your organization. So just have a quick discussion with your neighbor. You introduce yourself to your neighbor if you don't know them. Have a quick discussion. What are 1 or 2 stories in your organization that fall into some of these categories? So go ahead. Okay, let's hear from a few people. If you can just raise your hands and share some of your stories. I'd love to hear them. Anyone? Who'd like to share? You look as if you want to share. Go ahead, go ahead. Yeah, you may give him a mic if that's possible, otherwise. Okay, just go, talk loudly. Yeah. Yeah.
We are trying to recreate the vision, mission, values. So wherein there is a lot of hindrance for recreating the vision, mission, values. This is a 40 years organization, but so when we tried to recreate the vision as per the new management style and then thought process of the management, so there is a lot of resistance.
Yeah.
So then which we wanted to use this,
Yeah.
the storytelling kind of thing, and then which is going to help us a lot in doing
Sure.
it.
Sure.
So that is what we try
Okay.
to do.
Anyone else? What are some existing stories? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm working with Indira Group of Institute as a director IT. I have been trying to do the automation for the organization for the last 6-7 years. And the category of story which I wanted to speak is the fantasy. You know, I'm in a fantasy that, you know, I can do this automation without much of the effort.
Yeah.
And I'll do it on my way. And what I'm thinking is right, which is not happening.
Exactly.
You know, there are a lot of
Perfect
adjustment, there are a lot of change, which is, you know, thrown to me. So that is the fantasy which I am facing right now.
Great example. Great
Thank you.
example. Let's
Thank
hear
you.
one more example. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead. Just take the mic from here. So fantasy, which is, we don't need to do anything different. We can just do it this way. Go ahead.
Hi, Pradin. This is Kaustubh. I represent a training company, Theatre Resource, and the story that we face mostly is related with fear. So whether we get the payment, and if we get the payment, whether we get it on time.
So that's a
That's-
fair story, which is we'll not
Yeah.
get the payment on time. Anyone else? One last person? Anyone else would like to share? Okay, so you can see all of us, the already existing stories. And the story you create has to deal with the stories that are already in the organization, right? Now, let me talk about what makes a good story. And let me start by asking you a question. What is common across all of these? I've shown you a few things on the slides. What is common across all of these? Any guesses? They're all different types of stories. So what is common? Does anyone know what's common? Any guesses? They're all fantasy based, okay? Anything else? All transformation? So what if I told you that all of these are actually the same story? So all stories are fundamentally the same. So stories from time immemorial essentially follow a single story, which we call the monomyth, or the hero's journey. It's what is called the story of all stories. Okay. So any movie that you see, by the way, any movie that you see, any autobiography that you read will mostly follow this story. In fact, in Disney, they have a memo that actually lays this out, and all stories they create have to follow this. Now, what is that story? Let me explain to you what that story is. So the story is something called the hero's journey, which is a well-researched research point. And just think about your life or anything and you'll resonate. The first part of the story is there's some call to adventure. So I'm going on with my life, or the actor is going on with his life in his daily way. And something suddenly happens that says, hey, listen, there's something bigger to do. It could be a shock. It could be that somebody is killed. It could be that there's an opportunity. The first next step of the story is a tendency to refuse the call. How many movies have you seen where the hero at some point says, I can't do it, right? I'm not going to do it. There'll be a scene where he will cry or she will cry and say, it's not possible. It's not possible for me to do it. And then magically, like Yoda in Star Wars, some sort of a guide or a senior person comes who gives that person encouragement. That no, you can. The mother will come out dying on her bed that, my son, you can absolutely go and do this. And then the hero actually passes a point of no return where they take a plunge into the unknown, which is what you call crossing the threshold. And then there are all sorts of battles that the person faces. But what you realize that the biggest battle is actually the inner battle. It's not the battle outside. And then actually the hero returns and, and wins and comes back, right? So this is actually a beautiful structure, broadly speaking, for any story that you want to tell, because that's all our stories are essentially the same. So therefore, think about any story you create for your organization. It has to have a hero. It has to have why you're doing this. It has to have allies. It has to have an enemy. It has to have highs and lows. It has to have choices. Otherwise, it's not a story. It can't be, we want to become 7,000 crores by 2027. It will be an interesting journey. You know, it's like, how many of you know the story of Romeo and Juliet? You all know the story. So the story I can say in one line. Romeo fell in love with Juliet. They both died. Story over. That's not interesting, right? But Shakespeare takes us like through thousands of pages to come to that. So there has to be twists, turns, and so on and so forth. And as a structure, and of course there are many structures depending on context, but one that I find very useful is the following, which is you start with a backstory. So what are some of the things you've been proud of in your organization? What are some of the things that have gone? What's the history? Oh, you know, in 1987, we built the biggest bridge from here to here. We did this, blah, blah, blah. So you create a backstory. What's changed? What's the shock? But now there's something new happening. We need to do something different. What will success look like? What will that be? How can you make it as vivid as possible? Why is this so exciting? But then you come to a twist in the tail, right? It's not going to be easy. What's going to be tough about it? And then, of course, you can go up and down and make it kind of, make it more interesting and so on and so forth. So here are some of the basic structures of kind of creating story. Now, once you've created your story, and we don't have more time to talk more about it, there are different ways in which you can use the story. So one, of course, is to share the story. Obviously, if you've created one, you want to share it. But there are also other interesting ways like rituals and ceremonies or symbols that organizations use, right? So for example, and I won't go through all these examples, but Indira Nui at Pepsi, when they started talking about water conservation, used to tell the story of her childhood, where her mother would get up at 4 a.m. to go and actually fetch water. You want to give a personal touch to the story, right? Which makes it really personal. So people really, really kind of like it. Or ceremonies. You all heard of Jack Ma, right? Jack Ma of Alibaba. So Jack Ma apparently, and I think it's true, but at least from what I've read, used to make his entire top team stand on their heads so they could see what the world looks like from a different perspective, right? Or Southwest Airlines, when they bought another airline, they had a merger, they actually did a mock marriage ceremony to bring the two together. So these are all very different, interesting ways. And the whole point is you want to break the pattern. You want to break the pattern of someone standing in front with a PowerPoint, like I'm doing right now, to doing something really interesting that engages people. And then, of course, there's symbols you can use. So I don't know how many of you know, but the Facebook headquarters is actually the old Sun Microsystems headquarters. They took over that building. And the old Sun Microsystems sign, they've turned it back and they put their sign on it. So they never forget what happened to a company that didn't actually change very fast. So this is essentially, and I'll pause here, maybe we'll have a few minutes for any questions or other thoughts. But essentially, this is what I wanted to share, which is change is really hard. And at the core of it is the need to change mindsets. One of the most important ways you can change mindsets, not the only way, one of the most important ways is through the power of story. A story and a plan is not the same. The plan is the most direct way to go from one place to another. The story is the most interesting way. A story has to follow some elements. There are some elements that a story has to follow, typically in line with the hero's journey. There are already existing stories, so you need to replace those stories with other things. And finally, there are very many ways to engage it. And finally, even for yourself, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. So all of us are natural storytellers. If you had more time, you would have done exercises. I would have proved to you how each and every one of you can be an extremely creative storyteller. So let me pause here. I don't know if you have time for any questions, but that's all I wanted to share. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Faidun. Very interesting session. I think every number in this hall leads to 30 because of the 30 years of World HRD Congress. I love that aspect of the 30, 30, 30 over so many decades. Yes, indeed, everybody has a story to say. And I think it's important about how do you tell your story, how impactful your story is. And what I think intrigued me, Faridun, in your session is that a plan is perhaps the most efficient way to reach from point A to point B, but a story is the most interesting. Thank you very much, Faridun, and over to Dr. Bhatia now.
No, you please be here.
All right,
Aditya.
all right, I'll be with you.
After I have a felicitation for Aditya, I'm going to request him to be here. So,
It's absolutely not required.
no, just a little thing to say thank you. And I have, I'm going to request Parishit Jyotipala. There's a very bright young man who I met, you know, you're a storytelling expert. I mean, I've written 85 books and I love telling stories. So there's a very bright young man I met many years ago. And this young man was my student. Small, but a very fun. So this young man grows in technology to a level that he could make an impact in the life of 50,000 in 1 year. Amidst the pandemic, he writes stories about months. Sir, both of you, please come this side. You hold this and as I invite IT leader, Mr. Santosh, director IT. When you were a teenager, today a successful professional, your transformation and what is the story behind it?
Thank you. My story is very simple. I came to Pune in year 2000 from a very small, town, and joined an institution called Indira Group of Institute. And since then, I'm here. This is my story, very simple story. Grown up with this institution, and the kind of support I got from our own Tarita ma'am and Chetan sir, it has been an incredible journey so far. And especially the pandemic is for me is like a blessing in disguise. The thing which I wanted to implement over the years, it has actually helped me to, reach to the end user. So it's all, a story for me, and absolutely, fantastic journey for me. And thank you everyone for this recognition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Santosh. Yeah. I want you lovely people to meet a wonderful person in whose honor we are doing a few awards to recognize people who amidst all adversities have transgressed into higher proportions. May I invite you, Dr. Tarita Shankar, to shake hands with two lovely people on the stage. As you meet them, you will tell them your story, yeah, so that they are familiar with you. That's Tarita. Yeah.
Very good morning, everyone. And I think today doctor is in the storytelling mood. So he wants everyone to tell their stories. I completely agree with Santosh. One word I would like to start with is that my story is also very simple. I was born and brought up in the beautiful town of Pune. And I think people who are born and brought up in Pune and live in Pune somehow cannot leave that city. And it's a city which has got some of the best things. It's got best, I mean, it was always known as the Oxford of the East, and the people who ruled Pune, the Peshwas, and, after that, so many of them, they always believed in education. They were always highly educated people. And I think to be an educationist in the city of Pune, it was like a dream come true, though it was never my dream. But when it happened so, it hit me so hard that I never wanted, I mean, I got a lot of offers to go and start off, in different countries or different cities. But me and my team, we felt that there's so much to do in Pune. There's so much to grow in Pune. And so for last 28 years, we have been growing and consolidating and sustaining in Pune. And we're doing a great job with the help of a wonderful team. I just now, when Santosh came charging up the stage and took the award and went down, Shogata said, Shogata Mitra, my very good friend here, he said something very nice. He said, it's good to see, your team is always so charged up. And that just, I mean, in those 4 words or that one simple sentence, Shogata, you just summed up, that what my team is, a charged up team, and a team which actually believes in being a team. Of course, a team doesn't mean, let me tell you, that there are no fights. I have fights in my team and I have fights too every day, but that's how the team grows. That's how the team thinks better. That's how the team, evolves by, understanding each other, by thrashing out issues each other. And I've built this team over the last 28 years. And I think I'm very proud to say at this stage that probably we have one of the largest retentions in the sector of education. I know people who have come 28 years back, never left me, who've come 15 years back. Santosh, he didn't tell his story fully. Santosh joined as a student. Then he was a warden of the hostel in one of the hostels. And then he took up the IT profession. And today, like Raju said, that he seriously deserves this award because the 2 years of pandemic, what he said was right, gave him the opportunity to realize his dreams to the fullest. And that was a blessing in disguise. And the pandemic had a lot of effects on a lot of people, but somehow, I don't know, it had a good effect on Indira, on the, and on a education institution, which took up to online education practically overnight. I think today or yesterday, we are completing 2 years, of the day that lockdown was declared. And I remember that by the end of March, the whole of Indira was completely online, and not a single day of education missed. So this is not something that can happen without, a team, good teamwork, without a vision, without everybody, with everyone joining in your vision, with everyone looking ahead in life and not thinking of all the problems around you, but just having one thing in mind that yes, we have to sail through this and we have to sail through this happily. And we have to see that we take people along with us sailing through this. And talking about my awards, I always felt that when we started 3 years back, Doc, that was our idea that, to recognize so many people who are not recognized. I personally am a person who, I believe that, that we talk about, an educated and technology driven India, but there is also a part, of India which is called as Bharat, which is still there, which none of us can ignore. And we need to see that a lot of people need to be brought in the mainstream. So the awards also was one of the reasons for these awards was I told Doc, let's try to recognize people who are doing a lot of good work, but who are not recognized. So let's try to get as many as those people possible. Of course, everybody is doing good work and everybody wants to be recognized. And as many awards, Doctor, we start together, series is going to be less, because there are so many people who are doing good work, but let's try our best and see that we recognize maximum of them. Also, the philosophy of Indira has also been from day one that we did not always want to take the students who were the highest rankers or who were always in their 90s. Me and my brother, we always believed that we should, patthar ko leke usko tarash kar heera banana hai. That has been the philosophy of Indira. So students, with the least of the marks, with some worse marks and everything, we try to encourage them to come and see that because they are the ones who need to be, molded, given the best, and given a best chance to live a very good life and get them ready for that life. So somehow these have been, the foundations of Indira. And luckily, I have had a team which believed in these foundations, and I've had very little resistance for these kinds of things from my team. And a big thank you to the team So many of them are sitting here. I think some of my students are sitting here. Are the students here? Can you raise your hands? Yes, we have students from one of our management colleges here, and it's so good to see the students, finally coming to Mumbai, being in doctors program, which we've been doing for the last 20 years. But 2 years, of course, we all missed it. So students, a warm welcome to you to Mumbai, to this wonderful platform. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
The key thing I must share with you is none of the winners know they're winning this award. We don't tell them. So that's the intensity of research that goes behind the effort. So thank you so much, both of you, and thank you, ma'am, till I get you back again on the stage. God bless you. I appreciate you coming. I enjoyed your section. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, no order. Order as is presented to me. To give away the honors, may I invite you, Baba Jadhav, please, along with Professor Chetan Wakalkar, to give away the awards. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a very special guest who has flown in from the United States. Very enigmatic leader, one of those whom I cherish and look up to. I'm going to walk up to have him introduced to you. Christopher Neubauer. Would you please stand as we applaud for you? Good friend, and welcome to India. Namaste. Thank you so much for being here. Christopher, what's been your sentiment as you've been sitting through this morning?
It's great to be back here. This is my 4th World HRD Congress. I only missed last year because of the pandemic, and I'm here to celebrate with you the 30 years of this fantastic conference, and I look forward to sharing some insights on enhancing performance.
Wow, you have a very big responsibility today. There are 11 chairmen of companies who are going to come in to receive their CEO award. 11 of them, and they're all from mighty organizations, which are very, very large. And you will be the one who will be presenting that to them. So I'm so honored that you're with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher, for you, please. No order, but order as is in my hand right now. Sanjay Kumar, Senior Vice President, HR, Apar Industries. Sanjay Kumar, please walk up. Sanjay Kumar, yes. Please be on the stage after you receive the honor. Please be on the stage. Please be on the stage. Debasis Nayak, Manager HR, Hindalco Industries. Debasis from Hindalco. Somebody from Hindalco is here. Please come and receive the award on his behalf. He's gone out for a call. All right, so shall we wait? Yeah, I can wait. Yeah. Namrata Desai, Deputy General Manager HR, Oberoi Reality. Namrata Desai, can I please invite you? Thank you, Namrata, for being here today. And Smita Narkar, Head HR, Infinite Uptime. Smita Narkar. So happy to have you, Smita. Congratulations. Sumita Shankar Garg, Senior Director HR, Tanla Platforms. Congratulations. Covid Sharma, Head HR, Fortune Park Hotels Limited. Wow. Can you imagine what a lovely thing to have all of them here? Yeah. No. Yeah. This is a short function. She likes things very compact. Congratulations. Basab Bordoloi, Global Head HR, ISON Experiences. Basab. Congratulations. Sangeeta Srivastava, Director HR, Agriya Solutions. Somebody on behalf of Sangeeta from Agriya, would you please step up? She's in a session in the other room. Okay, we do this a little later. Sangeeta, we do Sangeeta's award a little later. Ashwini Malhotra from Wakefield Foods. Congratulations. He is the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Wakefield. Vice Chairman and Managing Director. Devasis had earlier invited you. Please be on. We need a group picture. May I invite you again, Devasis from Hindalco? Congratulations. Rama Koteshwar Rao, General Manager HR, Mayfair Hotels. Congratulations. Tamara Pereira, Assistant GM Training and Development, Bank of Ceylon. Tamara. Congratulations. You got it. No, but I think it's lost. Yeah. Ashish Kolwalekar, Head HR, Amagai Corporation. Amita Nijavan, Deputy GM HR, Oberoi Reality. Amita Nijavan. Ramakrishna Bota, GM HR, Aragon Life Sciences. Ramakrishna Bota from Aragon. All right, he's also in a session. Please, but please remember to call them here. And if they are around, please ask them to host the award. No, give me the next one. This one I have to do. These two, boys, you must take a little back step because these two I'm not going to ask you to do. Take a little back step because these two awards I am going to do. Yeah, it's my honor to do them. You know what I mean? Please allow me. Okay, here we go. I keep saying stories, and here's one more story. When I meet people, I always wonder what is the genesis of their success. Here is yet another man whom I saw so many years ago, and I seen his transition, his development, and his belief. May I invite you, Vinay Khable, Senior Executive Assistant of the Indira Group, to step up as I honor you this morning. Please hold this mic. So congratulations, young man. You're wearing my favorite color. Yeah, please receive this honor. So happy. All right, stay put. All right. I'm so enamored with what you do. I'm so enamored. I'm actually enamored. And I'm happy that you reach out for your social initiatives, integrating mind, body, and soul. So, Babaraje Jadhav Rao, may I have the privilege first to shake hands with you, give you a warm hug, and to tell you how happy and proud I am. popular demand. There is a need for a woman in sari to come up and take a picture as a group. So please come, please align, please step in front. Yeah. Her request was that it should be done differently. So I just adhered to her request. Yes, please, please.
Especially, thank you all of you for being here to receive this award. It's really my pleasure that you all have all come personally and received this award. And normally I do the awards, but I felt that I have two brothers sitting in the audience. One is Chetan and one is Baba. And I thought that they should have the honor of giving away my awards. You know, I mean, there's no point that I declare my awards and I give them away when you have two special people over here. So thank you, Chetan. Thank you, Baba, for doing the honors for these awards. And yeah, yes. But I want to say a couple of words about Vinay too. I want to say, he will not say anything, but I would like to say, when I talked about a team being with you for years, this man is with me for 22, 23 years now? 22 years, he's with me. And in the entire organization, he's the only one who has a hotline with me. So he is available to me 24/7. And in 22 years, he's never let me down. Anything I want, and this man in the world, any corner of the world, you know, he's able to get it for me. And if you can see him blush, he blushes like that for the last 22 years. And of course, Baba, I think, Raju, you did not introduce him. A little more introduction about this man is needed. I don't know how many of you have heard of the Hotel Fort Zadavgarh. I know many of you must have heard about this. This is the only heritage hotel converted from a fort into a hotel in Maharashtra. It's close to Pune. And he's the owner of this hotel. And his family has been into politics and social service in that area for the last, I think, 40, 45 years. And a very simple, quiet man, but the amount of work that he does for society is totally unbelievable. And I'm so blessed to have people like this in my life, you know, right from Chetan, who's my real brother, to Baba, to Vinay, and then all these wonderful people who will carry this memory with them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. No, I showed his social side today. More than business, his social side. Absolutely. So we get together for a group picture, please. Thank you, winners, and congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Aditya, please come and introduce my very special person who's flown in from the United States to be with us. And I'm sure we will all enjoy his presentation.
I'm sure.
Aditya,
I'm
over
sure.
to you.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, compliments, Dr. Tarita, Shankar. I think a fabulous work that you and your institutions are doing. And to all the winners, it's a delight to hear your story and sharing the stage with you. I think it's a privilege. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker for the day, while Dr. Bhatia has done a bit of introduction and stolen away, my privilege to introduce, but I will still take that honor and introduce to you Christopher Neubauer. He is the CHRO and the head of Global People and Talent at the Rotary International and Rotary Foundation. Christopher, as I mentioned, is the CHRO and the head of People and Talent at Rotary, which is the world's oldest and one of the largest humanitarian service club organization. Christopher is the 2021-23 chair of the board of directors of the International Accreditors Continuing Education and Training, IACET. He holds a Master's of Education in Global Human Resource Development from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and a Master of Human Resource Management, HRM. He holds certificates in human resources from Cornell University and DePaul University. Christopher served on the Faculty of Human Resources Development of Educational Leadership in the College of Education at Northeastern Illinois University, and previously on the adjunct faculty of the Development of Education Policy, Organization, and Leadership in the College of Education at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Neubauer served as chair of the Program Advisory Committee for 2019 Association for Talent Development, the ATD that we all know, the International Conference and Exposition. He served, he received the Distinguished Service Award from the IACET in August 2018, and he was honored by Cranes as a notable leader in human resources in 2020. I have immense pleasure in welcoming Christopher for his topic, Enhancing Performance, How People Leaders Impact Productivity and Results. I think the two most important aspects for any CEO, productivity and results. With a huge round of applause, please join me in welcoming Christopher.
Good morning, everyone. So the session this morning that I want to talk with you about is enhancing performance. And I'm going to focus on the responsibility of people leaders and share with you a couple of models that hopefully you can take back to your organizations to enhance performance among your employees. I do have a presentation with some slides that I'll be using with you this morning, and I'll make this available to you if you're interested in the presentation. As was already mentioned, I have the pleasure of serving as Chief Human Resources Officer for Rotary International and the Rotary Foundation. Any Rotarians in the room? Great, I'm so glad to be here with you today. In addition to working at our world headquarters in Chicago, Illinois, United States of America, we have two offices here in India, one in New Delhi and one in Pune. And it's always my pleasure to visit India, which I consider to be my home away from home. Only last year interrupted my travels, and so I was not able to visit those offices and come to the World HRD Congress. So it's my pleasure to be back here to celebrate the 30th anniversary with all of you. In addition to my work with Rotary, I also serve as the chair of the board of directors for the International Accreditors for Continuing Education and Training, headquartered in Washington, D.C. in the United States. This is an organization that accredits training providers to issue CEUs, continuing education units. It was established by the United States Department of Education in the 1960s to try to quantify non-academic education. And the group that became IACET developed what we now know as the CEU, the Continuing Education Unit. We do have a couple of organizations here in India that are accredited by IACET, and we would, of course, welcome other organizations to join us. So a few objectives that I have for the session today. First one is to apply influence to strengthen supervisor-subordinate relationships. Second is to use a performance assessment model. And the third is to learn to adjust variables of performance to improve productivity and results. And I'll walk through each of these and they'll start to make a little more sense as we progress in the session. Before I jump into the content though, I'd like to ask you a question. Who has primary accountability for performance at your organization? And notice that the word primary is in all caps and bold and underlined, because I understand that everybody has responsibility. But my question is, who has primary responsibility in your organizations? So for those of you who say managers, please raise your hand. For those of you who say employees, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to test this and I'll ask you again at the end of the session your thoughts around the same question. So again, I'm here to talk about enhancing performance, how people leaders impact productivity and results. Notice that I refer to those who have human beings reporting to them in an official employment relationship capacity as people leaders, not as managers or supervisors, because I truly believe that we need to focus on the relationships between managers and their direct reports. Employees don't want their performance managed. What they want are clear, achievable expectations. They want their contributions to be recognized. They want opportunities for growth and development. They want to be treated fairly. They want to be respected. They want to feel like they're making a difference, and they want to feel like they matter. Those are the things that employees want. So how can we use that information to help influence them and motivate and inspire them to higher productivity and better results? Very early in my career, I was trying to figure out how we as people leaders tell ourselves stories about how to manage employees. And I realized that a lot of pain that we feel in our professional careers comes from having a story in the wrong place. And let me give you an example of what I mean by this. And in trying to conceptualize this, I came up with what I've referred to as the sphere of control. And everything we do in life, it falls somewhere in one of these circles of the sphere of control. In the center of the sphere is total control. So that blue circle, those are the things that we have absolutely total control over. And to some extent, our degree of control, our influence are impacted by external variables. But things like, what tie am I going to wear today? And what am I going to eat for breakfast? And what am I going to eat for lunch? And where do I want to travel on vacation? Those kinds of things are within my controls. For the most part, I can make those decisions independently. The next circle is what I call influence. So these are things that we don't necessarily have control over, but we have influence over, including performance, productivity, and results of our employees. We cannot control people. If that worked, all we would have to do is tell people what to do, and it would always be done. And we know that that's not how life works. So understanding that we don't necessarily have total control, but we do have influence can help us be better people leaders. The next circle is interest. These are things that I don't have control over, nor can I really influence, but I have interest in them. Things like the cost of petrol. I don't have control over how much it costs to fill up my tank. I don't even necessarily have influence, although you could argue that there is some influence in terms of supply and demand using basic principles of economics. However, the reality is that we don't have much influence even over the price of gas or petrol. But we do have an interest because literally everything we buy has a price that's influenced and impacted by the cost of gas or petrol. And so as the cost of gas goes up, prices go up. So we have an interest in that, but we don't have control. We don't necessarily have influence. And then the last circle, I never really did come up with a good name. So if you have one for me, I'd love to hear it. I just called it everything else. These are the things that I don't have control over, I don't have influence over, and I don't really have much interest in, but they exist in the universe. So again, control is the stuff I have total control over. Influence is the stuff that I have influence over. Interest, the stuff I can't control or influence, but that still has a significant impact on me. And everything else is the stuff I can't do any of those things for. So let's talk a little bit about influence over our employees' careers. Every decision that we make as people leaders has an impact on our employees' lives. So for example, decisions around salary increases impact the decisions and choices that our employees get to make about what town or community to live in. How safe is it? They impact what food can I afford to feed my children? Is the food healthy? They impact where I can afford to send my child to school and where I can afford to send my children to university. Hiring decisions, starting pay, work allocation and prioritization, deciding who gets to work on what projects will have a huge impact on people's careers. Their professional development, as I talked about salary increases, who gets promoted, what kind of exposure assignments. So in terms of talent management, I would encourage you to think about not just what courses to send employees to or what salary increase to promote someone to, but think about exposure and reputation assignments. And here's what I mean by this. I have approximately 17 people who report to me on the Global People and Talent team at Rotary. And I recognize that in my capacity as Chief Human Resources Officer, I get to work every single day with Rotary's Chief Executive Officer. But my colleagues don't. And so I want to make sure that the CEO of Rotary knows who they are and knows what they're capable of. And so I provide them with opportunities for exposure to John Hugo, Rotary's CEO. I find ways to get them in front of him. I have them present to him. I have him interact with them. I want him to not only know what their name is, but I want him to know what they're really good at. So when he's thinking about what the organization needs and what talent that will require, he knows who those people are. So giving employees exposure and reputation opportunities is a tremendous way to influence, motivate, and inspire performance. In terms of influence, there are really two ways that we know from psychology and behaviorism, and that is through positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. If you've ever dealt with children, you're an expert on this. If you deal with animals, if you have pets, you're probably really good at this as well. Positive influence, of course, is recognition and acknowledgement. When something happens that you want to have repeated, you have to do something to reinforce that behavior so that the person who's exhibiting the behavior knows that it was a good behavior and knows that we want more of it. Celebrating successes, making sure that we're highlighting people's achievements and letting them know that we see them. We see you. We see what you're doing, and we see how you're contributing. You matter to us. And rewards. And of course, by rewards, I mean adding something that's desirable or favorable to the person who's exhibiting the behavior we want, or letting them keep something that's desirable or favorable, or removing something that's unfavorable. Those are the three primary sources of rewards. And of course, a negative reinforcement. This is the old school way of managing people, always pointing out errors and what they do bad or what they do wrong, and punishing people by either adding something unfavorable, keeping something unfavorable, or removing something favorable, removing something that they enjoy or that they like. And of course, the old axiom is that we know that you get more bees with honey, right? So hopefully you'll use your influence with the positive reinforcement approach rather than a negative reinforcement approach. So a couple of questions that I would ask you to think about as you're thinking through using this material back on your job. If you were to reverse roles, in other words, if you were to report to yourself, what feedback would you give me if we were in opposite roles? If I was meeting with an employee, I might ask them, what can I do differently as your leader? What feedback would you give me? And creating psychological space and safety for them to be able to provide that feedback to me. And what do you think caused the outcome when something bad happens? We just talked about storytelling. Let me tell you a brief story. I had the pleasure of hiring a professional on the global human resources team who was responsible for employee benefits, compensation, payroll, and human resources information systems. And he was quite early in his career at Rotary, and he was making a presentation to our board of directors, and something went poorly. It was not going well. And after the board meeting, he went back to his office, and I went back to my office, and a little while later, he came knocking on the door, and he said, "When is it going to happen?" And I asked, "When is what going to happen?" And he said, "When are you going to tell me how terrible this went?" And I said, "I don't intend to tell you because you already know. You already know what the experience was. I don't need to tell you something that is already obvious to you. And I'm not concerned about what went wrong and your role in it. What I'm more concerned about is not feedback, but feed forward. What are we going to take from this experience to inform what we'll do differently next time? How can we do a better job? How can we make sure to avoid those challenges and pitfalls that we encountered during that experience?" And he was mind blown. He was so used to having a manager who was going to tell him everything that he did wrong, everything that went poorly, and scold him. And that was just not what I was going to do. And so the good thing is that from that, I saw someone really grow and become very, very good at what he does. And I attribute that to largely what we're talking about today. Now, I told you that I'd share with you a model of performance. I want to thank my graduate students for the several years as I've been teaching human resources development at a university in Chicago for coming up with this really simple evaluation model. So I taught human resources development evaluation at the graduate level using a big textbook full of scholarly articles and ways to approach evaluation. And I realized that the students weren't really catching on to how to make sure you can evaluate things relatively quickly and fairly easily. And so let me offer you the 4 stages of evaluation that I started using with them and that I watched light bulbs go off because it made sense to them. The first is the expectation. You have to start with an expectation. What do you expect to happen? What is supposed to happen? Next is observation. What is actually happening? Third is evaluation. Is what's actually happening what is supposed to happen? Or is there some sort of gap? And then last is calibration. What needs to change and how? So expectation, observation, evaluation, calibration. And this is linear, but it can be out of step as well. And it's also cyclical. It's a continuing cycle. And the reason I think this is important is because as human beings, we don't always share the story that we're telling ourselves about what we expect of others. So for example, when you're disappointed with your wife or your husband or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, it's probably because they are not meeting some expectation you have of them. But the question becomes, do they even know what that expectation is? Have you even communicated what you wanted or hoped that they would do? And all human suffering is when you attach to an idea or a story that either is not true or that other people are not aware of. So as people leaders, we are responsible for making it very clear to our employees what we expect of them. And then we watch. We stand back and we watch. And the question becomes, is what they're actually doing meeting expectations? If it is, how do we reinforce it? How do we introduce awards, recognition, things that will send a message to them that keep doing what you're doing well. If it's not, then we have to figure out how to influence their behavior so that we can help them meet our expectations. And that, of course, is the calibration process. Now, I want to share with you a formula that's called Campbell's Determinants of Performance. Anyone familiar with this work? Guy by the name of Campbell. He's an IO psychologist who wanted to figure out what are the variables that impact human performance. In other words, is it possible for us to know what goes into people, human beings, actually performing? And what he found was that there are 3 different variables or 3 different elements that must be present in order for performance to occur. The first one he called declarative knowledge. The second he called procedural knowledge, and the third he called motivation. Now in 2020, these terms, or in 2022 rather, these terms are not necessarily intuitive. They don't make a whole lot of sense to us. So let me walk you through a story, through an example of what this formula basically means. Declarative knowledge is what you know how to do. Procedural knowledge is what you're able to actually do. And motivation is your willingness to do it. So the question is, what do you know how to do? What are you actually capable of doing? And how willing are you to do it? So let me give you the story. I once read a book about how to fly a plane. How many of you would be willing to get on my plane? Oh, okay, somebody trusts me, thank you. But not many, and I don't blame you, because reading a book is only declarative knowledge. It only helps me learn something. It helps me acquire knowledge, but it's not skill-based. So you can read all the books in the world on leadership or management or flying a plane, and it doesn't mean you're good at it. It just means you know information about it. Even reading a book, I could theoretically explain to you what each of these levers and buttons and devices and contraptions are in the cockpit of an airplane. I could probably take a quiz and match, this is what this is. I could probably do that because that's declarative knowledge. But the question is, can I actually get behind the gears of a plane and fly it? That is skill. That is what Campbell called procedural knowledge. So you have to have knowledge, you have to know something, and you have to have skill. You have to have procedural knowledge, the ability to actually put your knowledge to use in doing something. Perhaps you've seen this old World War II poster when women were encouraged to join the workforce in the United States and around the world, that, we can do it. We got this. That's willingness to do something. And so the point of the story is that you have to have all three. You have to know how to do something, you have to be able to do it, and you have to really want to do it in order for performance to occur. If we want that plane to take off, we need to have knowledge, we need to have skills, and we need to have willingness or motivation to fly the plane. So in addition to the work of Campbell, there was a guy who was studying under B.F. Skinner, who was trying to figure out, how do you engineer human behavior? In other words, can you manipulate people's behavior? Can you get them to do things? And so his work was happening at a separate time from Campbell and totally independent from Campbell, but I'm going to show you the parallels of the work that they did. This guy's name was Thomas Gilbert, and what he came up with was what he called human behavior engineering. And ultimately, he came up with a 6-box model. Some of you may be familiar with it or have seen it. It's not the 9-box talent management table. It's something completely different. I'm going to walk through and explain what this looks like. So he categorized declarative knowledge, procedural knowledge, and motivation using different terms. He called declarative knowledge information, which is more intuitive. He called skills instrumentation, which is still a little strange label to call skills, but he called motivation motivation. And he said that there are two different factors that you have to consider. One is the work environment and one is the employee. And let me give you some examples of what this means. So this is the 6-box model. So in the work environment, the question is, what information is present? In the work environment, what skills are required? And in the work environment, what are we offering our employees as incentives? And then the employee, what knowledge are they bringing to the job? What skills do they have? And how willing are they to perform? So he called information from the work environment perspective data. He called skills from the work environment perspective tools. And he called motivation from the work environment incentives. And I'll explain a little bit more about what these are. And then from the employee perspective, he called information knowledge, he called skills capabilities, and he called motivation motives. So let me show you what this includes. So data. Do managers clearly explain what is expected of employees? Do managers keep employees apprised on their performance? Do employees understand how their efforts contribute in meaningful ways? In other words, do people leaders and do employers provide this information to their employees to be successful? And then from the employee perspective, do they have the knowledge to be successful? Do they understand what's expected of them? Going back to expectation, observation, evaluation, calibration. Do they know what's expected? And do they use feedback to improve their performance? From a skills perspective, do we, as people leaders, do we provide our employees the tools necessary to perform their jobs well? Do we regularly maintain their tools and resources? In other words, if we buy them a laptop, do they have to use the same laptop for the next 10 years? Or are we constantly upgrading and making sure that they have the most up-to-date tools and resources necessary to be able to perform their job? And do the tools our employees need help them perform their job easier, better, or faster? And then from the employee's perspective, do they have the skills necessary to perform the job? And do they have the physical, mental, or emotional abilities to perform the job? Now, for those of us who are human resources professionals and those of us who are people leaders, understand that there was a time when we used to think personal stuff stays at home. Don't bring your personal baggage to the job. And Imagine how difficult it was, or it would be, if your computer on a random Tuesday just decided, I'm not feeling really good today. And sometimes your computer does do that, but not because it's having an emotional reaction. But imagine if technology, imagine if computers were like people and they showed up with baggage. Imagine if the computer didn't sleep well and was fighting with its wife, and its kid was causing problems, and it was distracted. It couldn't really help you with that Word document you needed to get done, and I don't have time for that PowerPoint, right? People are messy. That is human psychology. And we used to think that there was a wall between personal life and work life. And I'm here to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that can't be true. We have to bring down that wall. Because when employees bring their baggage to work, it does impact their productivity. It does impact their ability to produce results. It does impact relationships. And we have to treat them that way. People want to be treated humanely and kindly. And part of this here under capabilities is, are we providing our employees with resources to be able to deal with that baggage? And I'm not suggesting that managers or people leaders need to become psychologists. What I am suggesting is that employers need to make sure that when employees are struggling with something that's not work-related, that they have some resource to turn to. So one of the examples from Rotary is that we provide all of our employees with an employee assistance program, a toll-free number that they can call and speak to someone about when they're struggling with finances, or they're struggling with finding daycare, or they're trying to take care of an elderly parent, whatever the case might be. Because we know that if you have peace of mind, knowing that someone is there for you to help you deal through those problems, you can use your knowledge and apply your skills, and you will be motivated to work. The last one is the one that I find most interesting, and that is under motivation. And generally, managers, I probably shouldn't say generally, but sometimes when an employee doesn't perform, the manager's default inclination is to think, well, they must be lazy or they must be dumb. And that's not true. It's just not true. The question is, do they have the knowledge to be able to do it? Can they actually do it? And are they willing to do it? And if they're not willing to do it, we know from the formula that no productivity will happen. So the question is, how can we try to motivate them? So from the employer's perspective, what incentives are we providing to our employees? Let me tell you, one of the most important incentives is giving people a good job to do. If you want people to do a good job, give them a good job to do. They want meaningful relationships, meaning if you are a people leader, take an active interest in them as a human being. Understand their passions, understand what motivates and drives them, be kind to them. In addition, are we providing fair pay, competitive benefits? Are we providing professional development opportunities? And do we have other non-monetary reward structures in place? And then the question is, what motives do employees bring to the job? We all have motives. We all have motives. The question is our employer providing incentives that match those motives? Another story. Several years ago, my father retired from working on the railroad, and he found himself really, really bored. And so I was on the phone with my mother, and she told me that my dad went to work. And I said, wait, I'm confused. We had a big retirement party for him. All of his friends came. I thought that he was done working. And she said, oh yeah, he's just got really bored, so he wanted to go back to work. So he got a job as a handyman, a maintenance person working for a property management company. And so when I talked to my dad, I said, Dad, I'm confused. You spent all your life to get to this point, to retire and just live life and enjoy it. Why did you go back to work? You don't need the money. You don't need health insurance. You don't need those sort of forms of safety and security that the structure of employment provides you. What are you doing? And he said, I miss being around my coworkers. I miss my friends at work. And so what he was motivated by was being social and being active and engaged with other human beings. He built relationships with his colleagues, and he missed that. So he wanted to go back and replicate that. So the question is, was that employer providing the right incentives to meet his motive? And in that case, they were. So a quote from Thomas Gilbert as I wrap up here. For any given accomplishment, a deficiency in performance always has as its immediate cause a deficiency in a behavior repertoire, meaning the employee, or in the environment that supports the repertoire, meaning management, or both. Or both. So he's saying that if there's a problem with performance or productivity, it exists either at the employer level or the employee level, or in both. But its immediate cause will be found in a deficiency of the management system. Think about that. Sometimes when I present this to managers, they scoff because it feels like I'm saying that all performance problems are a manager's fault, and that's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that people leaders have the ability to influence productivity and performance. And let me talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. The work of B.F. Skinner was to understand the behavior and performance of rats. You probably heard of a Skinner box where Skinner conducted experiments in trying to figure out, can he manipulate the behavior of rats through rewards and punishments? And he learned that he could. And Thomas Gilbert learned that human beings are not much different than rats when it comes to being influenced by rewards and punishment. And so essentially what Thomas Gilbert was saying is that if a rat fails to perform in an experiment, the question is, whose fault is it? Is it the rat's fault or is it the experimenter's fault? How many say it's the rat's fault? How many say it's the experimenter's fault? He said it's basically the experimenter's, not fault, but responsibility. It's the experimenter's responsibility because the experimenter has control. Going back to the sphere of control, the experimenter has control over choosing, selecting which rat to use for the experiment, just like people leaders have the control over making hiring decisions. We choose who we're putting in our company. We choose that. The question is, did they choose the right rat or the right employee? If a rat becomes sick or unable to perform, are we providing care and comfort to try to get the rat back to speed? When an employee is dealing with personal issues, are we doing the same thing? Ultimately, what he's suggesting is that in all cases, people leaders have the responsibility to do whatever they can to try to remedy whatever deficiency exists in any of those 6 boxes in order to influence productivity and results. And that's not to say that if the employee still does not perform after all our efforts in trying to get them to perform by teaching them new knowledge, by teaching them new skills, by providing the right incentives, if they're still not performing, whose responsibility is it to remove that person from the job and the company? It's ours, the people leaders. We have accountability for performance through selection, through treating and conditioning. In other words, deciding what work environment is going to look like, with whom other people are going to work, what responsibilities they're going to take on, those sorts of things. We have accountability for the training that they receive. We are responsible for coaching and mentoring. And when things aren't working, it is our responsibility to separate people. Because let me tell you, one bad apple can spoil a bunch. So, understand your impact. I have 2 questions here that I'd like you to think about. As a people leader, you are part of your employee's career story. How do you wish to be portrayed in their story? So going back to this idea of storytelling, what story do you want your direct reports to tell about you at their retirement party? When they are asked, what was it like to report to so-and-so? Or what was it like to work with Chris? What was that like? What story do you want to be told? And are you behaving the way that you deserve that story? And the second question, what do you want your direct reports to remember your contribution to their careers and lives being? If someone were to ask you, what was the most important thing Chris ever did for you in your career? What do you want them to say? And are you doing those things today? Think about that. My last call to action to you is to ask you, what is one thing you commit to doing differently as a result of this session? In other words, what will you start doing because of the time we spent here together? What will you do differently? Or perhaps even what will you stop doing? But this is my call to action to you. I've shared with you information today. I want you to go back and try to fly this plane. Be motivated and do something differently. Start doing something, do something differently, or stop doing something. And together, we will change the world by influencing productivity and results. So with that, namaste.
Thank you very much, Christopher. I think the last slide of yours had two very powerful questions for people managers. And if we all relate to this aspect, you know, we do leave fingerprints on lives of people that we interact with and that we work with. I think as long as those fingerprints are nice ones, as long as we make each memory of each interaction loving and caring, I think we've done our work as a people manager. However, it's also important that managers ensure that they also provide the right environment for performance, you know. And I think because they are managers, they're supposed to manage resources. One of the most important resources we all know are people. I think it's important to create an enabling environment, as also maybe look at aspects of how each person can be treated differently to enable performance. And I think a very powerful point that you made in the last is, what would you want somebody to say about you as a manager in their retirement function? That's a very important point. Thank you very much, Christopher. I will now hand it over back to Dr. R.L. Bhatia, please. Welcome, sir.
Christopher, I'm not going to let you go. So please come, and Ashish, why don't you also come? I have a few felicitations of CEOs who are here. Please, right at the center. And I'm so honored that they are present amidst us today. No order as is presented to me, right? May I invite Amitabh Banerjee, sir? He's the Chairman and Managing Director of Indian Railway Finance Corporation. If he's not there, yeah. Thank you, Banerjee, sir. A few quick words, sir. I would appreciate it. What a lovely suit you're wearing.
Yeah, thank you very much, the organizers, for felicitating me with this honor. And I'm really honored and privileged to be amongst all of you. I represent Indian Railway Finance Corporation. This is a Schedule A Miniratna company of Government of India under the aegis of Ministry of Railways. And we basically finance the capex requirement of Indian Railways. So we are a 4.31 trillion rupees balance sheet company with a top line of about 18,000 crore and bottom line that is the expected this year of about north of 6,000 crore. So, we are basically an NBFC, and at present we are primarily financing the Indian Railways, the Ministry of Railways, and we have already disbursed a total loan of more than 5.21 trillion rupees since our inception in 1986, and the total AUM, that is the asset under management as of now, is roughly around 3.8 trillion rupees. Thank you so much, and I'm really honored to be here, and wish you all the best for the remaining part of the session. Thank you so much.
God bless you. Thank you so much. The pride of India. Pride of India. All my winners are pride of India. You're one of them. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. George Kuruvilla, Chairman and Managing Director of Broadcast Engineering Consultants India Limited. What an honor to have you with us. What an amazing, I'm so happy to see you. Extremely delighted, Kurula sir. Please. a few words.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really honored to be here and given this award. And I was wondering, how did you select me?
I'm a researcher by occupation. And even now on my phone, I have 200 plus newspapers and several magazines. I love to read or browse, and I love to use my time effectively. I'm doing a book on leaders who are sustainable. And there are very few leaders in the world who actually are sustainable. There's one of them sitting here. He's the youngest I discovered yesterday, right on the front row. And he's a billionaire, multi-billionaire, and he intends to become a trillionaire. So he's one person whom I actually track. Sanjay did not hear this, but that's all right. And when I track them, he's busy doing his business. So when I track them, I actually wonder what makes them so successful. So you, as a chairman of your corporation, I know what you're doing. And I'm in touch with the PSU Gazette. That gives me all. So please, sir, the honor is only by design of research.
Thank you so much. And I'm the chairman of a company called Broadcast Engineering Consultant India Limited. This is a mini Ratna company under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. So we do all kinds of broadcast projects for government, like Lok Sabha television, the Raj Sabha television has been built by us. All the private FM that you see across the country in 86 cities, the infrastructure has been built by us. So we are into cable TV monitoring, the satellite channel monitoring. And like you said, you monitor channels. In fact, we do monitoring of all the radio channels, the TV, the print media, the social media for various departments for the government of India. And we are handling those projects. And it just came as a chance to me while we were providing broadcast personnel to different organizations because of whatever the success that we had. Now there are several organizations, the Government of India organization, who are taking HR resources through us. And so we are having 10,000 resources today placed in at least 70 to 80 different departments working on various fields. So I'm really honored once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Mr. Manoj Kumar, the Chairman and Managing Director of EDCIL India Limited. What an honor. Manoj ji, a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatia ji. Thank you, organizers, and thank you, the jury members who selected me as a CEO with HR orientation. So I'll say I belong to the Ministry of Education. This is a public sector under Ministry of Education. I am CMD of this EDSIL. Yes, after the COVID, I think this is the first such a big event is there. And passing through this COVID pandemic and keeping the organization going on, increasing the turnover, keeping the motivation of all the employees higher to work for the organization in this difficult condition has been a Herculean task. And I think that is the mandate of the good HR, that you motivate the people in the tough times and still give the performance of the company. I will just quote one GRD Tata's quotation, that recruit the best people and then make them free to perform best. And that's what I think the principle is. Thank you very much.
May I invite Rajiv Kumar Vishnoy, Chairman and Managing Director of PHDC India Limited. Congratulations. picture.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatia and the organizers. Really, it's a great pleasure to be amongst the August gathering. And Christopher, particularly thanks to you for letting me go back to my last few years since I took over as the CEO of this company and started realizing what you spoke in your talk. Most of the things were so relevant to me and my style of working. In fact, the last slide where you said certain things at the management level, we started doing, we stopped doing, and then certain things where we really made a difference in the lives of the employees. See, the idea was it's a company of 5,000 people, employees, and in the public sector, it's very difficult, to keep the motivation of the employees high, to take the employees with you as a team and try to achieve the targets, because the government, in a way, has become too demanding now. We have been able to do that, and I'm so happy to announce that this is a company where we have been, the valuation of the company has been rising so fast that NTPC took the 75% equity in this company, and they are targeting that at the moment the net worth of the company is something like 15,000 crores, will very soon reach to 30,000 crores in a period of 2 to 3 years. We make a sizable intervention in the power scenario of the company. It's a power sector company with the Ministry of Power, and doing all forms of energy across the country and outside country as well. Thank you very much, Dr. Bhatia, for recognizing me and my contribution. Thank you so much. Thanks, Christopher.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Atul Kumar Jain, CEO of Ramagundam Fertilizers and Chemicals Limited. Sir, here today, we are honored with your presence.
I'm grateful to World HRD Congress for bestowing this award on me. I would like to dedicate this award to my HR team who worked tirelessly during the last year in a very difficult time. They took care of health concerns of all the employees and kept them motivated. We are a startup company, and we started our commercial production in March 21, and immediately after that, this COVID second wave stuck, and our HR team really took a very good care of all the employees, and that is why we are here now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That's enduring. Srimati H.K. Joshi, Chairperson and Managing Director, Director of Finance of Shipping Corporation. She is not here, but she's represented by her colleagues. Srimati Joshi from Shipping Corporation. Somebody is here? Please step up to receive the honors. From Shipping Corporation. Ma'am is not here. Pardon me? All right, please. Thank you. Please receive the honors on her behalf. Thank you so much. Sri R.K. Agarwal, Chairman and Managing Director of Vapcos Limited. Sri R.K. Agarwal of Vapcos, I have the honor and privilege to get you on stage. Thank you so much, sir. What an honor. A generous round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Please, please. Yeah, please. We are receiving on his behalf great colleagues. Thank you, K. Paul Thomas, Managing Director and CEO of SF Small Finance Bank. K. Paul Thomas. Congratulations. bright green color, your smile, and a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatia and the entire team behind this program. And thank you for choosing me for this great honor. I founded ISAF as an NGO way back 30 years before. And the objective was to create jobs for educated youths. And 30 years after, the group has 30 different institutions catering to various needs of the low-income people. And ISAF Small Finance Bank was started in 2017. It's a scheduled commercial bank licensed by RBI, and we are present in 21 states, having 1,000 plus touch points. The important thing is that we are serving 5.3 million low-income families. Our motto is to fight the partiality of prosperity, and I dedicate this award to my field staff who are fighting the partiality of prosperity on a daily basis. Thank you once again for the honor. Thank you. That's nice.
Congratulations and thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhatia.
Stay
Thank you,
blessed.
Bhatia. Thank you.
Thank you for the good job. I'm a proud Indian, and I'm sure you're making India proud. Sanjay Khandare, Chairman and Managing Director of Maharashtra State Power Generation Company Limited. May I please have you or your colleagues to receive the honors this afternoon. Sanjay Khandare, okay, they are not here. I have a very senior leader online, Dr. Nalan Singhal, Chairman and Managing Director of Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited. Can we have an online message from Dr. Singhal? He could not be here today, but he is very proud and privileged to receive the honor. Yeah, can we have the online message or communication, please? Dr. Singhal, lovely to see you. Namaskar, Dr. Singhal.
Namaskar.
Please unmute yourself, and happy to, thank you, Dr. Singhal. We would like to hear you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Sound. Sound, please. No, he's live on sound, please. Dr. Singhal, we'd like to hear you.
Am I audible?
Very clearly. I can see my Prime Minister behind you. I can see Mahatma Gandhi behind you. And the third picture is a little hazy. And I can see you, feel you. Lovely smile. Bharat Heavy Electricals Limit ko mera salam. Aapko mera salam, Dr. Singhal. Please say a few words.
Thank you once again. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I would first like to thank Dr. Bhatia and the entire team for this honor. I am really very grateful for this. I think HR is something which is very important, especially in the tough times that we are all going through. Today, we've been talking of VUCA worlds, but today is the true VUCA world that we are living in. And for any organization in this world, in this situation, HR has to play a very important role. And I firmly believe that the CEO's role, HR is primarily the CEO's responsibility. You see, it is thereafter the HR division's responsibility, but it is the first responsibility of the CEO. And if you take care of the people, they will take care of you, they will take care of the organization. And this is something which is even more important for PSUs, where at the entry stage, we get some of the best input material, but thereafter we are, we are seen to be having issues in delivery. But I think there is a lot we can do and a lot our people can do. And they always prove this in the times of need, in the times of crisis. That is when the true strength comes out. So I'm once again, I would like to thank you and thank members of the jury for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Singhal. Namaskar. And you got a great audience applauding you. I don't know if you can see all of them, but it's almost houseful. We're trying to follow COVID protocols at the Taj Lands End, but you make a promise to me before you sign off. Next day, I would like to see you in person.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singhal. Stay blessed. Thank you so much. All right, I'm so blessed, so many chairmen and so many of them. Please, right at the center. Some teachers have done so well. So we have teachers and placement coordinators and, amidst all the corona chaos, they tried to make a significant contribution. So you'll be very proud to recognize them. Okay, Samita Ingle, Manager Corporate Relations, may I please invite you to receive your Innovative Education Leadership Award. All right. Samita, please be on the stage. Yeah, you can receive the citation and be on the stage. To either side, whichever side you like to take. The man with the coat, the man without the coat. Renu Garg, you'll have to take it. Yeah. Renu Garg, Director of the Indira School of Communications, may I have the privilege to invite you. Congratulations. Dr. Kumendra Raheja, the Dean of the School of Business Studies, PGDM, Pune. Congratulations and celebrations. I want the world to know I'm happy as would be Dr. Shirley Abraham, Faculty, Indira Institute, PGDVM, Pune. Congratulations. Pradeep Kharat, Coordinator for Best Academic Coordination. Pradeep Kharat. Pradeep, okay, we get this announced a little later, is not here. Shulba Wagmare from the placement cell. Shulba Wagmare. Okay, Sandesh, these are all for tomorrow. Is there anyone missing? Okay. Yestrela was is today? No, tomorrow. Dr. Prajakta Shingarpure is there. Prajakta Shingarpure. May I invite, can I get the trophy for Dr. Prajakta Shingarpure? Lovely to see you. Yes, please. Dr. Ravi Bandari, are you here today or tomorrow? Okay. Dr. Bandari is tomorrow. Kishore Pathare is here. Kishore. Dr. Kishore Pathare. Wow. I like the word Director of Physical Education. Dr. Kishore Pathare. Dr. Komal is here. Dr. Komal. Dr. Komal, faculty. Asif, you'll come to take over the next session from me. And Neha Ramteke is tomorrow. Neha is tomorrow. So guys, let's all align after you receive the award. Your smile says it all. You're so happy, and I'm happy that you're happy. Step in front. Align yourself. Step in front. No, I meant align. Okay. Align. All right. So the tallest people at the edge. So you have a great picture that is going to come around. Yeah, great picture that's coming around. Your award is in the presence of many CEOs who are present here this afternoon. And I hope you enjoy yourselves, and God bless you till I get you back on stage again. Please have a seat. And so Asif, Whom do I invite? I forgot to get my schedule copy. Okay, Aditya, you're going to come back? You're there? All right. Aditya is there. Thank you so much. No, his copy is downstairs. He wants his own copy. Yeah.
So when Dr. Bhatia comes on stage, I think the stage is immensely blessed with such a magnificent personality, and he speaks so well. I only try and emulate you, Dr. Bhatia, every time, but I think the distance is very, very large. So congratulations to the respective CEOs for the awards that you've all won. I think for all the CEOs with an HR orientation, let's give them a huge round of applause. Fabulous work done by the respective CEOs. It is indeed, as the CMD of BHEL mentioned, it is the CEO's job also to manage human relations, human resources. And I think we as HR practitioners only want a very enabling CEO for us. And I think I've seen a lot of them, you ma'am and all the others, I think fabulous work. We now get into a panel discussion. Can I have some more voice in this mic so I can match Dr. Raju Bhartia's bass? Thank you very much. This is a panel discussion, and the moderator of this panel discussion is once again my friend Christopher Neubauer, who is a CHRO and the head of Global People and Talent, Rotary International. Chris, can you please take your seat on the dais with a round of applause? Can we welcome Christopher Neubauer? He has with him two fellow panelists, Mr. Kunal Wadhwani, Group HR Head, GCC Choitrams Group, and I was in Dubai working for Landmark. I remember the Choitrams Group. So Kunal, welcome on the stage. And with him and with them joining is Mr. Manuel D'Souza, the former Chief HR Officer of Intellinet Global Services. Please, Mr. Manuel, if you can take your seat as well. Now, the topic is extremely fascinating. This is actually reworking the work, and the topic is how virtual reality is impacting HR. And for more, I hand it over to the panel.
Thank you very much. So the example that I used during my session about flying an airplane included the portion of skill building. And as most of you know, airlines use virtual reality in training pilots. And so what we wanted to talk about today is the impact of virtual reality on human resources. And I will give the caveat that I still say human resources, but I categorically reject that humans are resources. Instead, people use resources to create value. So I have a couple of questions for the panelists today to learn a little bit more about how they are using virtual reality from a human resources perspective within their organizations. So what I'll do is ask a question and offer both panelists an opportunity to provide some insights. And hopefully we'll walk away from this moderated panel discussion with some ideas about how we can perhaps infuse virtual reality into our workplaces. So let me start with just sharing some information with you. And that is that PricewaterhouseCoopers recently conducted a survey and found that employees are 4 times more able to perform as a result of being trained through virtual reality compared to those who were trained in a classroom. So think about that. 4 times more likely to perform faster than those who were trained in a classroom setting. And using the airline example, which would we prefer as the safest option? A pilot trying to maneuver a plane in challenging circumstances in virtual reality, or putting a pilot's life in danger just to see how they would perform in that situation? So let me pose the first question, and that is, we'll start with you, Manuel.
Yeah.
How are you currently using virtual reality in human resources, and what has that experience been like for your employees?
So thank you, Chris. So I think there are many examples that we can give of usage of virtual reality in HR and in organizations. And this has really taken shape over a period of time, over the years that have gone by. And we can see if you can start with, say, campus recruitments or job fairs. I think virtual reality is a great tool that you can use at campus recruitments and job fairs, where you put a headset onto a prospective candidate and you show him what the facility looks like, what the job profile will look like, uh, and give him an experience of the company profile through that particular experience, which is immersive and interactive. There is another one which you can use for psychometric testing. Put a headset, get him into a game, get him into an interactive session with the headset, and into an immersive type of an interactive session that he's playing with an avatar. And there are qualities such as, his listening skills, his multitasking ability, his reflexes. So many things like that can be judged through that particular game that he plays for, say, 45 minutes or even as less as 20 minutes. And you can understand what those gaps are and where does he need to develop. Should we hire or not hire this candidate? Another example could be around induction and orientation, where we can use VR for that. And considering that we are mostly everybody joins remotely, we don't need to get physically people down for a common induction. You can get him through an induction overview of the company facility, take him through a walkthrough of the policies, of diversity, equity, POSH training. All of that can be done through a VR headset. And just to extend that question, maybe things like even training. I think L&D training, capability training is best done through VR. I mean, it's at a very elementary stage right now, but there is big scope for this. So look at training like sales training. You want to train somebody how to sell a particular product, or you want to sell a BMW car and he's already has a 3 Series, but you want to sell him a 5 Series. Get him into a headset, give him the experience of what that car will look like with all the features, and he can make a decision even without going to the showroom. Or something on customer relationship or presentation skills on how he needs to make an impactful data-driven pitch to a CEO of a company where he's having a lot of concerns. And through VR, through an avatar that he's talking to, he can get an interesting conversation going. He can get into a dialogue, and based on, at the end of it, he can have as many iterations of that discussion as possible, and he can get a lot of skill gaps around how he's not making that impactful presentation. I can go on. There are many examples, but I'll stop here. Of course, we need to, but I can take on more examples. A classic example would be on product training, actually. In my organization, there's a place in Philippines where the most of the customer service associates didn't understand what is a 5-star hotel, and they were required to service a 5-star hotel guest. So we created a virtual reality experience for them where they put onto the headset, and part of their product process training, they actually experienced what a 5-star hotel looks like, a walkthrough right from ground floor to the top floor of the hotel, understood what the rooms look like, what the bathroom looks like, what are the taps when people complain about, what is seaside view, what is the gymnasium looking like, what are the sports facilities, what are the other amenities that he can get. And this associate, without even going to a 5-star hotel, because of that VR experience, was able to service the customer in a classic, much better way than before. So these are some examples. We can go on and on, but I'll stop here. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. So let me start by saying that I'm a very simple person, and I love mountains, I love oceans, and my reliability on technology sometimes is limited as a person. In our organization, we have not started using virtual reality right now. That being said, it is not because my organization believes that we are against it, but we have been successfully using augmented reality within our premises. And Choitrams as an organization, it is into retail. We have supermarkets. We are into FMCG, right? There's a sizable amount of workforce, which is blue collar in our organization, approximately 73%. We did think about whether or not to implement VR. One challenge that we faced at that particular point in time was, does it affect people negatively from a health perspective? Is one thought that came to our mind. I saw your presentation, Christopher. There's so much of content that you have provided for this session, right? And I think in global scheme of things, when we look at what VR is doing in today's time, and there are some exceptionally good things, but a lot of emphasis is on building functional competence and not behavioral competence at this particular point in time when we talk about virtual reality. Virtual reality in many ways can create small training bites for you at this particular point in time. But when we look at assessing a person in a behavioral competence perspective, I think human element is very important. Sometime back, Christopher, when you were speaking, you were mentioning about how people really wanted to come back and work together. There are so many people sitting in front of me. Allow me to tell all of you guys that I love sitting over here rather than sitting in my office wearing a VR set and looking at you, right? And it's an amazing feeling coming back in front of live audience after 2 years. This cannot be exchanged by anything. And when we also talk about behavioral competence, sometimes it requires you to cross boundaries in a session, in a training session, where you can speak to your trainer can probe you into things that are beyond a defined parameter of a training session, right? But when you talk about virtual reality, it's a coded element. It is defined by certain parameters. And if any trainee has a question beyond what they think they see, it is still limited. Is there a long way to go from a VR perspective? Absolutely, yes. But yes, it is at this point in time, very limited to functional competence. In my organization, a lot of emphasis is laid on behavioral perspectives. And I personally believe that there are limitations as far as VR is concerned. So that's where we are. But augmented reality is not very different, okay? And VR has actually cropped out from augmented reality. So that's where we are at the point in time. And as we go ahead, as we have further more questions, this is just to set the base for now. And I look forward to receiving more questions from you on this.
Great, thank you. It strikes me that virtual reality is not just an important function or feature to use to appeal to the hearts and minds of people in the workplace, but in all aspects of life. So for example, at Rotary International, of course, the organization does its work through the contributions of generous donors around the world who give freely of their time and their money to make the world a better place. And I'm reminded of a quote from Maya Angelou that people will not remember what you said, people will not remember what you did, but people will always remember how you made them feel. And so virtual reality is a tool to create an experience where people can feel something. And to the extent that they have a reaction to that experience, they're much more likely to be engaged in a call to action. In other words, to do something as a result of being through that experience. So for Rotary, we created a virtual reality simulation where we actually were able to place people into combat, into a simulated conflict between people to experience what that was like. And unfortunately, we're seeing this happen in the world today between Russia and Ukraine. And without having to put people in harm's way to understand what that experience is like, these folks were able to put on a headset and feel what that experience was like, not just through visual stimulation, but audio and sense of touch. And so it's very, very impressive to me how this works. In addition, just the other day, I was shopping online. Prior to the pandemic, I spent most of my time living at my desk in the office. And when we went to work from home, I found myself spending most of my time at home. And I, like many people, decided I need to change the way this looks if I'm going to have to spend so much time here and look at it so much. So I was shopping for a marble stand, and the company that I was shopping at offered augmented reality shopping experience. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. So the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality is that augmented reality uses real life in addition to the virtual component. So you're marrying the two. And in the shopping experience, what I was able to do was see what this piece of furniture, virtual furniture, looked like or would look like in my living room. So it took a photo of my actual real life living room and it created virtual furniture so that I could see what that was like. I'm wondering if you can share just briefly a story or two about how virtual reality compelled people to feel differently and as a result do something differently.
So I think, Chris, you used a very classic example, and whatever you said, let me just expand and build on that. So of all that you learn, after 2 weeks, what you remember is only 10% of what you read, 20% of what you hear, and 90% of what you do, exactly echoing what Chris just now said. And that's the retention that you will experience when you go through a virtual reality learning versus a classroom or an e-learning. So that's the big thing. The other thing, what Chris also talked about, the Price Waterhouse Coopers study that was done, and it said that the time for learning, VR learners learn faster. And of course, I also agree with Kunal that it's not yet developed there. But virtual learners do learn faster. They learn, we save 69% more time when we do classroom training versus the VR training. There is 33% more saving in time when you do VR training versus the e-learning training. So those are statistics to show that VR does have its advantages, but maybe we have not arrived as yet. Maybe it's not time as yet for organizations to just grapple it and go with it full steam. And of course, to Chris's example about the shopping experience through QR codes, classic examples are, you see holograms in restaurants nowadays flashing on your table with menus, and you click on the menus, you can see what the food looks like. What a lovely experience for you to know what exactly you want to order because you know what the food looks like. Or you just scan a code and you get the menu and you order it, and after that you pay directly from there itself. So what a lovely example of augmented reality we have. And then in organizations too, when you come for registration, people are just walking into your organization, say for interviews, you have a QR code, helps the employee extract the QR code, register online with all the basic details that he wants, and it goes straight into the system, into the HRI system. Or if he wants to, if he joins the organization and wants to do induction formalities, there is a QR code, you scan it, you do your induction formalities through that. Or in an organization, you want to change careers and you want to understand what job roles are good for you at a horizontal level, at a vertical level, scan a QR code, get that information. So I think QR codes augmented reality has really helped us in a long way. And just to extend those examples a little further, I was in London a month back. I went to a showroom and they gave me those Ray-Ban glasses to put on. And I was so amazed that you could hear music through those glasses. It's actually replicating, substituting your AirPods and other forms of music that you would listen to. And as I was interested and chatting more with this guy, he says there will be a technology one day when through augmented reality, you will get your Google Maps. Today you see it on the dashboard of your car. Tomorrow you will see it on your glasses where the Google map will tell you, this is the right you take now. You will see the digital display there. And that's I think, a great evolution of augmented reality. And what surprised me more was as we spoke, he was so knowledgeable. He said that, one day when you meet a stranger, but you said you say to yourself, I've seen this guy somewhere, I know him. How do I understand what's his name? Who is he? And that's when you ask, like Siri, you ask the spectacles, who is this guy I'm looking at? And the software will throw up his Facebook profile on your spectacle display. And how amazing is that for you to get to understand who's the person, you've met him before long back, you don't know his name, you're embarrassed. And here is a great example, a great, assistance for you to actually go up to him and say, hi, you're so-and-so from so-and-so company, and spare that embarrassment. So I think these are great examples. And as we develop, I think we are just on the tip of the iceberg of AR and VR, and there's lots more to come. And I think AR is just emphasizing your real world and giving you a unique experience of an extended world that you would like to see?
Couple of things that I can think of, because we have tested virtual reality, to try and see if we can implement it within our organization. And one thing that I totally agree with you, Manuel, where it gives people an opportunity to try and see if any kind of job rotation is required within the organization. You get an opportunity to see and feel, what other jobs look like. Okay, you can get into a situation and you can ask yourself, is this for me, right? I think beyond that, one very big factor, very important factor that virtual reality can provide us is a sense of security, right? When we are especially getting trained on shop floor level practices. To give you an example, and I just mentioned some time back that we are a retail organization. We hire a lot of butchers within our company. And it's a very tricky and a risky job. When we go to a shop, it doesn't really feel like, it looks like, you're ordering for X amount of meat that you choose, but it's a very tricky job because there's a knife involved over there. Okay, have I seen accidents in my organization? Absolutely yes. Do we want to curb those in future? Absolutely yes. How can we do that using virtual reality? You create a simulation through virtual reality where any butcher you hire in retail organization wears that VR and goes through an orientation of how to cut meat, what are the different types of cuts depending upon what kind of meat you're selling. And basis that, it just creates a bigger sense of security rather than taking a new guy and making him an employee from a candidate and then putting him on a shop floor, giving him a knife in his hand and say, all right, replicate what I'm doing over here. There's always a broader risk. So I think this is one example that I can give you from retail because we have tried it as an experiment within our organization. But you have, Christopher, spoken about how simulations are used in airline industry. The same goes in defense industry as well. At the same point in time, you're not going to give a soldier a gun and ask him to just go and jump. There are security organizations which provide security guards to your organization. These are the organizations that can typically use virtual reality to try and put them into situations where if there's a robbery happening in the organization where I have set you up, how are you going to deal with that kind of a situation? And I think from that perspective, a sense of security is, I think, a very good first step to provide an employee within the company using virtual reality.
Great, thank you. I remember the days when e-learning was the big buzz. Everybody was talking about changing from classroom-based learning to e-learning. And I think there's still a little bit of confusion around the difference between e-learning and virtual and augmented reality. And I hope to address that a little bit. From my perspective, I was always challenged with thinking about the difference between hard skills and soft skills. So from a learning and development perspective, we tend to think of those two things as separate categories of skill building. And so if you think back to the presentation I gave earlier around declarative knowledge, I would postulate that declarative knowledge is not an appropriate way to use virtual or augmented reality. There are probably better, cheaper ways to do that. But when it comes to declarative knowledge, the actual skill building, I do think that augmented and virtual reality holds a significant place. And when you think about the difference between what we've traditionally called hard skills and soft skills, predominantly it was hard skills that are used for virtual reality and augmented reality are used for building. So hard skills are, of course, the physical skills that people will have to perform. So the motions that people have to use, things like performing a surgery, flying an airplane, those sorts of very hard type skills. But the question is about the role of augmented reality and virtual reality for soft skills, meaning like building stronger relationships and conflict resolution and diversity, equity, and inclusion, things that are not necessarily the hard skills. So my question for the panel is, what role do you see augmented and virtual reality playing in soft skills in the future?
I think you're right, Chris. Firstly, VR will or in the past, VR was more used for hard skills, safety measures, preventive maintenance, and especially in a data room, say you have a data center, you need to train somebody on how he goes and maintains something which has gone wrong, some uptime that is not perfect, and you need to train him exactly what to do in the data center. He doesn't need to be physically present there. He can actually be trained through a VR set. So that's the great part of the hard skills that you can train. And on the soft skills part, we talked about certain soft skills training that you can do through VR. But the advantage of doing VR of doing soft skills through VR is that employees will be more confident and that's what is actually studied and actually tabled as a finding, that VR people who go through VR learning will be more confident in their approach towards post learning, and they will be able to practice what they learned much better than what they would have done through e-learning or through classroom learning, because there is sometimes a wealth of information leads to poverty of attention. So through VR, you get that focused attention and you get that perspective out from the candidate. Besides being more confident in a VR learning, I think VR learners are even more emotionally connected to what they have learned. They believe, they become more successful. So those are some of the positive parameters of VR learning. And soft skills, lots of soft skills can be learned through VR learning. Like Chris talked about, conflict resolution, negotiation skills, team building, leadership. All of these can be simulated in an environment, got into the headset. You are interacting with an avatar. There are various cases, repetitive number of times that you can get into those dialogues with that avatar. And each time you get into those dialogues, there is a software that tells you exactly how you fared, where your gaps are. And some of these inputs are used for your own personality development and as a TNI input for the HR team. So I think soft skills, VR is really, really helpful from a soft skills training point of view.
I think when we speak about social skills, right, in an organization, there are a couple of things that come to my mind. Number one, code of conduct in an organization is very important, right? And HR is supposed to be the king of culture for any organization. Now, when we are trying to set up the culture, when we are trying to set up a code within the organization, I think this is where a virtual reality platform can come in and showcase people of what are the do's and don'ts in the organization, what are appropriate behaviors within the organization, and you can get a classic assessment of that going through a virtual reality program. There are many organizations, and I'm sure most of the people sitting over here, in your organization, you have seen so much emphasis on creating anti-harassment policies within the organization. So you put a person through a VR and showcase them some examples about discrimination, showcase them examples about bullying, institutional bullying, showcase them examples about harassment, how it happens within the organization, whether it is verbal or sexual in any form. People, I think, will have a broader sense of connect when they go through a virtual reality program and try and understand these kind of codes within the organization. The flip side to this is, and I quote, I was reading a blog, okay, which is written by one of the finest technological companies in India. I can't name them because there's a practice in India of suing people immediately. So I won't name the organization, but I found this article to be a little bit oxymoronic, right? And I'll tell you why. Because the article starts off trying to emphasize the essence of VR on personalities and everything. And it says that because HR has become transactional, right? It has a one-sided communication methodology that they follow in today's time, okay? Where people within the organization don't get a feel of connecting with the organization. And this is where VR comes into picture. Now, my point over here being, if this is the reason why you implement VR in your organization, then I think the whole essence is lost, because the point is very simple. I will wear a VR headset. I will connect with the organization. But once I remove my VR, I have to go back to the same boss. And as a classic example goes, people don't leave organizations, people leave managers. So if your manager is not going to treat you well any which ways, he may be treating you well inside the VR. But what's the point of that, right? So there are certain limitations at this particular point in time. But yes, when I speak about code of conduct principles, when I assess about social behaviors, these are very strong areas where virtual reality can definitely help people in the organization.
Great, thank you. As we wrap up, I have two additional questions that I'll ask together and ask that each of you address the questions. The first one is, it's been great discussing virtual and augmented reality, and it sounds glamorous, and I see no downside to any of us using it. But surely we're not considering the entire picture. So my question, number one, is what are the disadvantages of using augmented or virtual reality? And follow that up with the second question, and that is, if we want to learn more about introducing augmented or virtual reality in our organizations, knowing what the advantages and disadvantages are, where should we go? What are some resources that you would recommend our audience to investigate?
So I think talking about some of the disadvantages, there are obvious disadvantages of VR, and I think we alluded to both sides of it, the advantages and the disadvantages. So the first thing you'd like to see is the cost of a headset. It doesn't cost you less than $400 or $500 each. And that's what you need to understand. You need to relate your existing HRMS system to your to the other e-learning platforms that you have, and all the other methodologies that you have, like videos, etc. And then do a analysis to say, do I really need VR in the organization? Is it really adding value over and above what I currently have? Is it giving me the value? Is it giving me the ROI? Is it cost beneficial? I think that's the first question you need to ask yourself. What business need? What relevant is it? How relevant is it that I adopt VR, and what business need of is being met through VR? I think that's the first big question that we should ask ourselves. We should not jump. We should brainstorm, ideate, innovate, and take the best decision what is needed for the organization, and just not jump into VR because it is one of the best digital tool that emerging technologies that we have on hand. And I think other disadvantages could be a VR headset can also cause motion sickness, dizziness. Youngsters can actually rotate their necks 180 degrees and not feel anything for an hour, right? People like us who rotating our heads maybe sometimes 180 degrees itself for more than an hour is a challenge. So you need to understand those physical challenges as well and see whether VR headset and the VR technology, is it really of value add and really that beneficial to the organization from continuous use point of view. And the third aspect I would think would be the cost element in terms of scale. I mean, organizations that are 30,000, 40,000 employees strong would see a break even and say that if I were to train 2,000 or 3,000 employees in my organization through VR technologies, then I think my cost per training per head may be cheaper than my classroom training or my e-learning platform. And I think that is proven that over scale, you will become better off with a VR training technology than a classroom training technology. But if your scale is hardly 1,000 or hardly 500 in a year, you may want to question the use of VR for you from a long-term perspective. I think that's the disadvantages part of it that I would like to talk about.
Well, most of the things Manuel has already covered, things that I would have had spoken of. Just to add a couple of more points, I think human connect is very, very important to all of us, right? Face-to-face interactions cannot be replaced and will not give you the same feel at any given point in time, whether you use virtual reality or use any other kind of technology. I think we are social animals, and we would like to stay that way. We would like the whole fundamental of feeling each other, touching each other, and understanding each other face to face, rather than full-fledgedly accepting VR as a technology that dominates our life. I very transparently would like to put it across. Virtual reality is an amazing thing. It has got some perks and some benefits associated to organizations, especially with regards to HRM industry. But at the same point in time, as HR people, today we are not just a transactional domain. Today we are a domain who's trying to support business in more ways than one. We are looking at numbers, we are looking at data, We are looking at what works best to, fit our culture. We are not creating policies in our organization because somebody else next door is using a particular policy. Similarly, if somebody else next door is 100% on VR, you don't necessarily have to go 100% on VR. Do what best suits your organization. And by doing that, I think HR will gain more respect from the business, more respect from the senior leadership of the organization, because you are working towards trying to achieve a beneficial structure for your team, and you're working very closely to the strategy and the P&L aspects of your team. So with that, I think I rest my case associated to VR. Do what is required, accept it, but don't forget to use the blended approach within the organization at this particular point in time, until a time comes where VR establishes itself as a platform which is beneficial in all scenarios. But till then, I think we should continue using a blended learning approach over here.
I'd just like to add that there are companies, Chris talked about which are the organizations that could help. So there are many organizations that can help you in developing your VR technologies in the organization. And there are companies like Microsoft, Google, Cognizant, Adobe, Amazon, Pricewaterhouse, and Walmart, etc. They have really implemented VR to some extent. So I think it's great to understand what was their business requirement, how did it meet that requirement, and what was it that actually got them there. And companies that have leveraged this emerging technologies and created game-changing experiences for employees and added value to their stakeholders are the companies that have distinguished themselves as the best from the rest. So I think understand what was their competitive advantage in using VR. AI and AR is a given. I think you should not hesitate to use AI and gamification and AR. You should not. But VR, you should question the need, the business need, the ROI, the value, and what purpose is it being served. And I think that's what Kunal and I and Chris have been echoing, that do it with caution. Just don't do it because it's a cut, copy, paste from what other organizations are doing. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And just for a couple of parting words. One of the questions that I've often found myself pondering is, why would people embrace this concept of virtual reality knowing that it's not real, knowing that it's fake? But the reality is that the human being mind is a very complicated organ. And even though we know it's not real, we also know scary movies aren't real, and we still enjoy them. And we're still frightened by spiders. So the power of the mind is such that we can experience virtual or augmented reality and still have a very realistic expression of emotion and response to that experience, even knowing it's not real. And the other final parting thought is, if you ever find yourself with some time on your hands and want a good laugh, go to YouTube and look at videos of people experiencing virtual reality for the very first time. So with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity to hear from our panelists today, to hear about how virtual reality and augmented reality are impacting human resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to all the speakers. Can we align for a group picture, please? Well, they deserve a big round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris, Kunal, and Manuel. Now, may I invite Dr. Dwivedi to welcome the other speakers.
Very good afternoon, friends. Now we have two more speakers before we go for lunch. Both are very distinguished speakers, and both are part of the different world. They are online. So first I have the World HRD Congress core team member, very well-known face, Nina. And Nina is the President and Chief Officer of the Nina Associates. She has been in the industry for several years and she has been the frequent visitor. Nina will be talking on the HR role in supporting workforce mental health. HR's role in supporting workforce mental health, which all of you know is very important, particularly keeping the last 2 years specific things in mind. We had gone through all HR leaders have gone through several ups and downs, taking care of the employees, the hybrid working model, work from home, and taking care new policies, new challenges, lot of stress from people. Even work from home becomes 12 hours job, then the normal work from home. So all these challenges we have gone through. I'm sure Nina will give the more insight about how things can be managed and what are the updates on the workforce mental health issues. Nina, over to you. We are missing you here in India, in Mumbai. I'm sure you are also missing us. And please take care and go ahead. Can we
Hey,
connect
thank
to
you.
Nina, please?
Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, Nina, we can hear you.
Great. And I think I can also share my screen. Well, I have to tell you that I've been listening since we started this morning, and a lot of what I put together to share with you, you have already heard. But part of my presentation is really going to be about changing the perspective around these things, to really look carefully at our employees' mental health and to begin to understand how important their mental health is, and our role in making sure that that mental health gets taken care of properly. I am hoping that you all can see my screen. Let me try something, because I don't think my screen is showing up the way that it's supposed to, but let's see if this will work. Okay, can you see the PowerPoint? Can someone let me know?
Yes,
I
can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate being able to hear from you, because now the way I've got this set up, I can't really tell if it's working the way I should. But what I want to do is maybe look a little bit differently at the perspective, from a different perspective, at the things that we've already been talking about this morning and throughout the program so far today. We all know that people are a valuable asset, and we all really understand the value they bring to our organization, and the importance that they bring to us as employers. I'm thinking my slide is not being, oh, come on. There.
Yeah, now it is fine.
Yes, thank you. But do we really know how to retain the value and the assets of our talented employees as we did before COVID? Post-COVID, we have a very different scenario that is really critical for us to consider. Employees really need to feel that their jobs love them and they love their jobs, and that together, as we've been talking about the importance of being a collective group and being part of a bigger group, becomes even more important. How are we able to show our employees that their jobs love them? What are the things that we can do that actually will help us do that? And how do we retain talent and support our employees' well-being and their mental health? Turnover is more than just a numbers game. And Christopher went over many of these things about the way that people feel about their jobs and why they leave jobs and what's important to people in jobs. But as you look at these, you'll see that many of them actually have to do with feelings and stress and the way that people appreciate or don't appreciate or feel appreciated or don't feel appreciated, the things that are happening in their workplace. And it's that we really want to look at. Whether our organization has low voluntary turnover or high voluntary turnover, low involuntary turnover or high involuntary turnover, or some combination of both that varies by department and according to the time of year. Turnover statistics tell us a story about our company processes, procedures, leadership, and culture. And this is a quote from Pay Scale in an article that they did called "It's Turnover, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly." It is a key metric for HR to look at in more than just one way. It's not just a number. When we have turnover, it really impacts many, many areas of our business. First of all, we lose a lot of IP and knowledge when our employees transition out the door, and the employees and our clients experience disruption in the way they're being treated and who they're able to interact with. And so it creates a disruption of our process flow as well. Not all turnover is bad. So sometimes turnover can be seen as important to be able to help bring new ideas in, and maybe it's time for some people to go. And you can see here a list of some of the reasons that people stay with the business, and some of those are not very good reasons for people to stay. And it's important for us, and I think Chris also spoke to this in terms of managing performance, that when people are staying for the wrong reasons, that we don't allow them to continue to stay, that we actually take some time to ensure that we move them up and out and around so that we can have the happiest and most productive workplace that we are able to produce or provide for our people. How can HR provide the support and awareness that's needed to ensure that employees' well-being, including sound mental health and job satisfaction and engagement, are really being met? So it is an issue of company culture, and I think everyone has spoken to this before too. But the big issue here is that in the Journal of Psychological Wellbeing and Job Satisfaction, it was written that it finds that given the amount of time an individual spends at work and working, job satisfaction is a really integral part of psychological well-being and therefore of mental health. An important component of all employees' well-being includes having the right resources available to them. If you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, making sure that all those basic needs are met, but also helping to create or being able to exist on a daily basis in a place where sound mental health, job satisfaction, and engagement are key elements of the environment that foster and nurture their relationship with their employer. It doesn't always cost a lot of money, but it does take an investment of time. And I think Christopher and Sanjay also spoke about these things earlier, and maybe Faradum did as well, that how well do you know your people? How well do you actually understand and know who they are as individuals and what's important to them? Anything about their family, what their current circumstances are. These are really critical things for HR to be aware of in terms of the way that we interact with our managers and with the business sectors that we support, but also to help us really create that stickiness with the relationship with the employees. It does take an investment of time, and we want to ensure that there is feedback that's often shared, both from the managers, and this again speaks to something that Christopher shared. They need to know what's expected of them and how well they're meeting those expectations on a regular and purposeful basis. And it should be happening daily where they get this feedback so that it's not creating stress. They're not concerned from a mental standpoint of how well they're doing at work. They know and they understand exactly what should happen next, and that whether they're doing what is expected of them or whether they need to change their behaviors in some way. It also takes an investment of time, because what's our reaction when they make a mistake, or when a part is missing, or when they continually call out sick? Is our reaction to just, as again, Christopher, I think, shared this beautifully, that oftentimes it's just seen as the employee's fault. They're sick, they're lazy, they don't want to come to work. But oftentimes that really is not the case. There's something else going on, that if we have that relationship, we as HR have that relationship with the employees, we might be able to actually help them resolve or solve whatever their performance problem or lack of presence at the office might be. Another place for us to really think about is, what is it that our policies say? Are our policies written for compliance, or are they really written to convey a policy of trust and building relationships with our employees? Oftentimes, and I know in my own experience, policies are written for the people who disobey more than they're written for the people who obey. And what message does that send? Because most of our employees do obey, do follow the policies, do want to be a part of the culture and the process that we're building. Of the culture and the process that we're building. But if our policies are all about, this is again, also addressing some things that Christopher shared with us earlier, if it's all about taking away something or making something harder or more difficult to do as a result of negative interactions or behaviors, are we really sending the right message? Are we really painting the right picture for our employees to feel that their well-being and their mental health is really being looked after at work? Or are we making it more stressful? Are we making it more rigid? Are we giving them more reason to be concerned? Where does our focus need to be? So from, again, my completely sharing my own perspective with you, we need to really look at supervisors and managers and help them be more coaches and help them provide regular feedback, give them the tools and the opportunity and the training to be able to incorporate that into the way they lead their job. And Christopher, I'm sorry to repeat so much of what you said, but I think you did a brilliant job of sharing both of our presentations today. And it's really important. People don't really want to be managed. They want to know what to do and be allowed to do it. And if we hired the right person, we should get out of their way as their supervisor or manager and let them do their job and only be there when they need us to coach them or to remove obstacles that might come into their way. We can include our team, our whole team, in the hiring process and make sure that they get a chance to review candidates and potential new members onto the team as well. Our supervisors and managers can cross-train or help the employees be cross-trained department to department to offer opportunities to work on different projects, because people get tired of doing the same thing all the time. And when they have something new and they can be challenged by something new, it often sparks new energy in them. Doing supervisors and manager check-ins, not just HR checking in with people, but managers talking to their employees, not only about business, but how are things going? How are your children? How are your in-laws? Any of those things that let the individuals understand that we're connected with them, not only for our own financial gain or for business, which we are in business to make money, so certainly that's always going to be at the top of our list, but we do really care about them as people too. Supervisors and managers know how to delegate and how to allow for autonomy. This is the idea of looking for results and not necessarily looking at all processes, but making sure that we can delegate things appropriately and share with managers the appropriate way to delegate. A lot of times, and I think we mentioned this morning as well, people aren't able to do the job that's delegated to them because they don't have the right skill to do it, or they don't have the right tools. And if we don't check in with them, if we don't follow up with them and make sure that all of those tools and skills that are needed are part of the delegation process, then we're actually letting them down. It's also really important for the organization to be open and transparent about the strengths of the business and the financial perspectives of the business, to understand and be a part of how they connect, how what they're doing actually connects to helping the company be successful, and know what message our culture is sending. What are we really conveying to our employees by way of our culture? Is it the message that we really want them to hear and to receive from us? If we don't stop, if we don't examine it and we don't look at it, we may think we know what the culture is, like the posters on the wall. And yet when you really think about culture, it comes down to what is the employee experiencing in the way they work and interact with each other every day. That's where the culture really exemplifies itself. And who's responsible for human resources? This is, again, is another question, but is it the CEO? Is it just the HR manager? Is it all the supervisors and managers and the employees themselves? Everyone has a role to play if we set it up properly within our organization, and if we pay attention to the right tools and make them available for each of the players to be able to use and leverage, to be able to strengthen their own mental health and their own well-being, because they have the tools and skill, ability, and opportunity to address that. Remember to keep the human elements in your human resources. And I'm so glad I wanted to share a story, since we've talked about storytelling and it's become so important. So I just wanted to share the story of Grandma Sparky. So this woman in 1979 decided to start this organization because she was in a very, very difficult place herself and really ready to give up on life. And she decided that in the way that she came out of her depression, she decided it was really important to help people understand that who I am really makes a difference. And she started the Blue Ribbon organization, which now has gone global. And now they're building Blue Ribbon cities. And the whole idea is for people to walk up to each other and give them the blue ribbon and say, who you are really does make a difference. You make a difference. And I want to give you this blue ribbon. May I put it over your heart to let you know how important you are, with the arrow pointing up, to be able to tell you that you can achieve your dreams. And then if I'm going to give this to you, I have to do it with a special blessing from me, which is, and then you point your finger at them and you say, bing. And if you're doing this in a room and all the people are doing it together, you can't believe the energy that this creates in the room. This is used now across the US in many ways, and now she's gone global too. It might already be in India, but I think it's a great kind of story to share about keeping the human side of things and the idea of being able to actually tell someone else that you think that they're important and let them know who they are makes a difference. If we look to the future with emotional intelligence, there are 4 areas of impact that really have a bearing on our employees' mental health and our own, for that matter, as well. They're the people, the technology, the economy, and globalization. And when we think about people, it's not just the employees, but we have to think about ourselves and our employees and our clients and also our vendors, because the way that we interact with all of them and the way they interact with us is an important part, again, of the way our culture exhibits and the way that our employees experience being our employees. So when we look at ourselves, it's like being on the airplane, and they always tell you, put your mask, if the oxygen masks fall, put the mask on yourself first before you try to help someone else. And this is really an important aspect. We need to think as HR professionals, and I just received the SHRM magazine, and the very first front headline today says, HR under pressure, and it shows the letters HR with vices on each side of it. So what have we been through? How are we dealing with the personal outcomes and impacts of COVID in the last couple of years? What have we done for ourselves during this period of time? Have we developed any best practices that we want to take along with us as we move forward to help us take better care of ourselves? Do we need to build a way forward? And what do we need help to build a way forward? And what type of help do we need? And are we willing to reach out and find it for ourselves first so that we can actually be that strong pivotal point for the employees and for our organization? For our employees, each of them have different perspectives and outcomes from what they've experienced through COVID. Meet and greet them where they are. Everything that we've been through has been a significant change. And everything that we're going to do going forward is also going to be a significant change initiative. We must take it step by step. We must be sensitive to how people react to change. And we must remember to initiate the things that we're going to initiate as a change process so that we give people time to go through the process of unfreezing and learning and refreezing. What will our work look like and be in the future? We just had a great glimpse at augmented reality and virtual reality and how those things might be impacting us going forward. Is that going to be a part of our workplace? How will roles and responsibilities in our organization change in the coming 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? How will we communicate and what will we communicate to our employees? And how many multi-directional channels will we use? Do we just send out emails or do we use text and tweet and Facebook and other social media avenues to be able to get our message across, as well as scripted speeches for our managers, scripted speeches for our CEO, and constant and consistent messages across the organization? For our clients, they've never needed us more than they do right now. So how has the impacts of what they've experienced impacted their brand or their image and who they are? What can or should we be doing to prepare our employees for dealing with client issues? They may be more concerned or even engaged than in the past because of the way that COVID has impacted their business or their organization. And depending on our relationship with them, we may need to be more involved or engaged. What do we need to do differently to help people prepare our teams to be ready for our clients and to return safely to work, whether we still work remotely or whether it's hybrid or whether we are in the office or at a client's location? All of those things are coming back. How do we help people feel safe in that new environment? What do we need to do to help ensure that there is a feeling of safety? And our vendors, what due diligence do we need to do with them to ensure that they'll still be able and willing to provide and meet our needs? Do we need to search for additional backup just in case some of the vendors aren't able to survive the COVID shutdowns? How have the past 24 months impacted them, and how will the next 24 months impact them? And how are they preparing for the future? If we don't ask our questions about these things, our clients and our vendors, we can be impacting our ability for sustainability as a business ourselves. And the more prepared we are, the more we think about these things in terms of the way they impact our employees' ability to be able to do their jobs, to have that job satisfaction, and to have good mental health around being happy and satisfied at work. We can't do it unless we answer these kinds of questions and are prepared to look and do the things that might be difficult for us to do around dealing with our clients and our vendors. For people's
Meena,
major...
can we wrap up with the key points? We have running out of time. In case we can have the key points and then some questions also.
Yeah, I'm almost at the end right now, but yes, I'll hurry it up. So the things that are important, and I think that you got this message also from Chris, but the big thing here in terms of people is dissonance between values that are espoused by the company and the company's actions on a day-to-day basis. And technology is definitely going to impact us going forward, and just realize that some people are more attuned to and better able to deal with technological changes than others. And it will put a lot of stress on our workplace as we enhance and leverage technology to move forward. But we can also introduce technology as a way to help us think about doing our jobs differently, to help meet the needs of that future with a better and more streamlined and effective a support system for the employees as they do their jobs, if we're able to put that technology in place. And then how prepared are we for the impacts of an uncertain economy? We can't just say that COVID's never going to happen again. And I think this was said earlier as well. VUCA is here to stay in a different way than we've ever experienced it before. But it's really critical for us to be prepared to deal with that uncertain economics that might face us in the future. And certainly globalization is here to stay. And we need to know what our strengths, opportunities, and threats are. And we need to share that with our employees so that they understand and can help us actually in the process of looking at how we can be better in that global marketplace. So what's HR's role? Make sure that the basics are right, and then create a sustainable culture that leverages emotional intelligence to connect, build, and strengthen the employee value proposition. And thank you, and I'm sorry if I went over.
Thank you, Nina, so much. So let's have the another speaker, and then we can have few questions from all of you before we proceed for lunch. Nina, thank you so much for such a insight inputs about the workforce mental health. Friends, we have our next speaker is Clara, and Clara is the CEO of Top Learn Horizon. The topic is the millennial challenges, retaining the key new generation workforce. The millennium challenges, retaining the new generation workforce. That's, I think, the challenge all of us are facing. And the currently, particularly from last 1 year, the attrition rate has gone up. Keeping the work from home in mind, people are sitting in Nasik and Nagpur. They are getting offers from Bangalore, Delhi, and working from home for 2 years, 3 years, even permanent. So this has really resulted in a lot of attritional issues, and I think all of you are facing that challenge. So I'm sure Clara will give more insight. Clara, over to you. You have 10 minutes, and please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. So my name is Clara. I'm actually joining from Nigeria. Please confirm you can hear me.
We can hear you, Clara.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. So I will join with other HR professionals to say congratulations to World HR Board for our 30 years in service. So congratulations, thank you very much. A brief introduction of who I am. So my name is Clara Monia Odo. I'm the CEO for Top Learn Horizon. In Top Learn Horizon, what we do is we run a learning and development program. We run certifications. We help the young ones come to know more about human resources and the impact of human resources to their lives so that they will become better people and they will be able to work very well in the world of work. So that's what we do with Top Learn Horizon. So we link them up to professionals in the industry. We link them up to professional bodies where they can be able to learn and develop themselves. Thank you. So I'll move very quickly into the topic at hand. The topic says the Millennium Challenge, retaining the new generation workforce. When we talk about millenniums, we look at people from the year 1981 to 1995. Those are the kind of workforce we're looking at when it comes to millennium. And we know that their expectations are quite different from the older generation. There's a lot of expectation on their mind. You know, those millennium people, they are also called the Generation Y. They are called the Generation Y Millennials are considered the most connected generation. They are most connected. Now, they are the people that came out during the tech period when there's a lot of technology. They can actually do a lot of things with their phones. They can do a lot of things on social media. They are into marketing, online marketing, and all of that. They do a lot of technological things. And the older generations really don't have that kind of a technicality. So most times in the world of work, there's a bit of struggle. Now we have the efficient managers and we have the challenged managers. Why do I use the word efficient managers? The efficient managers are the ones who have been able to understand the millenniums. They understand how they operate. They understand what their needs are. So now the experienced and efficient managers meet the millenniums, give them responsibilities, irrespective of the fact that the millenniums come with a lot of entitlement mentality. They want to do things their way. They don't want to go through protocols to achieving their responsibilities in the office. But now the experienced managers, they teach the millenniums and draw them closer to themselves so that they can actually make them a better person. But the challenged managers, what do they do in the other way around? The challenged managers only think of themselves. They only think of, oh, I've got 20 years experience in the industry. Oh, I've been doing this job for this number of years. I've helped the organization achieve this and all of that. So they don't want to even listen to the millennials. They don't want to hold them. They don't want to mentor them. They don't want to coach them. Whereas the millennials, on the other way, they need closure. They need to be held in the hand and teach them. They need mentorship. They need someone who will coach them. They need someone who will understand them and help them because, they are just coming into the world of work. And because they are coming with a lot of technology and all of that, so they expect you to meet them where they are. I would like to talk about the effective versus challenge perspective. Now, under the perspective, we have what is called adaptability. The efficient managers easily adapt. They talk about their own need to change in order to manage in today's world. Whereas the challenge managers talk about how others needed to change in order to make it in the real world. You see, when it comes to adaptability. And then when it comes to self-efficiency, the effective managers believe there was something they could do about their situation. This is what the experienced manager is telling the millennium. There's something you can do about your situation. You are not a failure. I listened to Christopher's presentation, and one of the things he said that they do in Rotary is the fact that they don't tell you that you're a failure, but what they do is they give you a helping hand. They want to know the lesson that you can learn from the experience. What can you learn from the experience? Or you have made the presentation and you expect a feedback, and the manager is not ready to give you a feedback. And then when you come asking for the feedback, the manager is asking you, oh, what lesson did you learn from that experience? Because the manager wants to help you from the current level where you are to the next level. Whereas the challenge manager believed that there was little they could do about their situation. There is little they could do about their situation. That's the belief of the challenge manager. The effective manager also have confidence in the millenniums. Now I'll tell you how. They have confidence because they allow their subordinates to challenge them. Idea processing, ways of doing things. They allow their subordinates to bring in idea. Now, as a manager, because we are all HR professionals in this call, as a manager, how much time do you give to your subordinates? How much time do you give to the millenniums? That person that has just entered your world of work, that person that is under you, your subordinates, how much patience do you have with him so that that person can learn on the job? The challenge manager, in the other way, in terms of building confidence in the millennium, what does the challenge manager do? He sanctions or punished their subordinates for challenging them. That is what the challenge manager do. He's always on the side of sanction. He's always on the side of punishment. He's always on the side of penalty. And he would end up not building confidence in the life of the millennium. Now, another part of the perspective is power. The effective manager use the power of relationship versus the power of their position. Now, how do they build relationship? They give them a listening voice. They draw them closer to themselves. They make them see them as if they are on the same level. So it's not about, oh, I'm the boss, I'm in charge. Oh, it's all about what I say that happens. No, that's not what the effective manager do. Rather, they use the power of relationship versus the power of their position to help the millenniums to stand on their feet and run. Whereas the challenge manager felt the only power they had was their positional authority. And so at every point in time, they want to use that power on the millennium. And then at the end of the day, the millennium will be disgruntled. At the end of the day, the millennium will not find the need to continue to work because there is no love, there is no acceptance in where he or she has found himself. Now, in terms of under the perspective energy, the effective manager working with millennium make them feel younger. They make them feel younger. They make them being appreciated. They make them feel that, oh, your contribution matters. Oh, this is a strategic focus for the organization. And I need your input. I need your contribution. I need you so that we can both drive the organization from the current level where the organization is to the next level where the organization is. Whereas the challenge manager felt the challenge manager felt working with millenniums make them feel older. I can cite a scenario here. I work with some group of people years back, and then they've been working for like 30 years. And while they were working, the new generation came in. Because they are graduates, because they are lettered, and these ones that have been working, they are technicians. These ones that are already hot, they are just coming into the industry. With all the knowledge that they have, they want to pour it in. They want to make things work. Now the older workers, the challenge managers, there's a pushback. There's a world of don't come close. There's a world that, oh, you don't fit in here. Where do you think you're bringing your idea from? We've been here for like 30 years. And do you think you know better than we do? That's what the challenge manager faces. And it gives the environment a toxic environment. And then it limits growth and productivity in that business. Now, success, under the perspective success. Now, the effective manager saw themselves as key to the millennium success. They saw themselves as key. There's someone who works with you as your subordinate. For that person to succeed, you need to give a helping hand. You need to help that person to stand. You need to show that person, handhold that person. We call it mentorship. You can also call it coaching. You can call it hand-holding. You need to help that person understand what the strategic focus for the business is. And then you need to help that person for that person to succeed. And then you show the person the step-by-step road that the person can do to succeed. Whereas the challenge manager, on the other hand, saw the millenniums as an impediment to their own success. They saw them as an impediment to their own success. Hence, they build defense. Hence, they don't want them to grow. So I would like to say, understanding the new generation matters. We have to understand them. We have to understand that they are autonomous. We have to understand that it comes with a lot of entitlement mentality. We have to understand that they are imaginative. We have to understand that they are self-absorbed. We have to understand that they are quite defensive. We have to also understand that they are abrasive. We have to understand that they are mostly unfocused. And then we have to understand that they are indifferent.
Key points. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. When we understand that, we will be able to strike a work-life balance, and then we'll be able to design rewards, we'll be able to design a way whereby they can have a self-expression of themselves. We have to also pay attention to what their needs are. We have to appreciate their achievements. We have to also give meaning to their life, even in their career life. In closing, I would like to say that retaining the new generation workforce, once we have identified the perspective that they are coming from, we have to be able to help them to achieving that. Thank you very much for this great opportunity. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for your very, very in-depth understanding about the retention challenges. We really appreciate that. And thank you so much on behalf of all my colleagues and World HRD Congress. We thank you for your time and for your knowledge. Thank you so much, Clara. Thank you. Thank you, Nina, and thank you, Clara. I'm sure next year we'll see you here. Friends, thank you so much for your time, and I think it's time for lunch. Lunch is arranged outside. Please have lunch, and after lunch session, we have another sessions and award functions. Please do come. Thank you so much.